welcome back to the Opposition Podcast. I want to make the point that you did promise, Rukshan, that you were going to create a transition with a bit of sound, excitement, but no.
Yeah.
Here we are, another episode, and no sound, no fancy transition. And people are making a good point of the laugh out loud swap glasses over. So, can you tell us why you look like you're on holiday?
I'll put the glasses on just to kind of make it all work. But yeah, I'm actually not on holiday. I am traveling. I'm abroad. I am in Sri Lanka. And no, I have not been deported like people have said. They would love to deport me and tell me to stay in Sri Lanka. But actually, if I overstay my 30-day tourist visa, I'll get deported back home to Australia. So I'm here visiting some family and just doing some other things as well while I'm here, but also continuing to work and, be active. With what we normally do, opposition podcasts and other work as well.
Does the government know we don't want you back? Like, if they try to deport you, we're not
Look,
taking you back?
There might be some individuals putting in documents as we speak to try to keep me here somehow. I don't know. It's possible. There's a whole class of people that want me out of the country for whatever reason, because apparently, loving Australia and being patriotic is apparently something that you should be deported for. So let's see what happens. But yeah, look, even when I'm overseas, Avi, despite me not doing the intro and all these kind of things, we are still continuing this show. So you got to see,
there is credit.
That's pretty good. That's commitment.
That is commitment, because my wife said to me, well, now that you've made Rukshan do it while he's traveling, you're going to have to do it while we're traveling.
100%. I'm going to hold you to that. We're going to have to see you when you're at WEF or wherever you are next, tuning into the Opposition Podcast.
You're going to have to manage the back end, everything. Like, all the fancy changes here are all because of who?
Because of Benji, right? Benji's done most of the work.
Welcome to all the viewers. Almost 2,000 of you joining us here tonight. Thank you for tuning in. Some minor differences that you'll see on the screen now is we have right below us 2 live comment feeds. So we can't control them. We don't pick who comments. All it is both mine and Rukshan's YouTube comment feed. For now, that's all we managed to be able to get up there. We tried to run one feed. So if you want your comment 100% to come up on the screen, especially if you're bagging me or Rukshan out, make sure to head to YouTube and do it, and it will show up on the screen. And on top of that, any super chats, we're going to bring up and read them. So we're going to highlight them in the old way that we used to bring up comments. So we'll read every single super chat out. The rest of them will just flow. This is only on YouTube. So you have to go to mine or Rukshan's YouTube and either comment for it just to feature on the feed on the screen, or super chat, and we will stop at points and read those super chats. Those super chats essentially are supporting our show also financially. So thank you in advance for all the super chats.
100%.
Packed show tonight. A lot has been happening around the world, and boy, much of it has been quite entertaining.
It's intense. Like I was in like luck. One of the greatest inventions I think now is the fact that you can have Wi-Fi as you're traveling on a plane. So instead of watching like a movie and things like this on like a 14-hour leg, you end up tweeting and consuming the news. And I was just going wild with my tweets and stuff, following the news. And there is so much going on, and it's this interplay as well between Australia and the US and all these kind of similar themes, and bit of the history. That's a lot of things we're going to talk about as well, right? Some of the things that happened in the past and how it relates to today. So it's pretty a crazy time in the world, and I'm here with you, Avi. We're going to unpack it all in our own unique way. I hope everyone goes along. I'm not jet lagged, no, because the time difference is like a few hours. So I think 5 hours. Australia's ahead by, so it's not too bad. Yeah.
Have you had Sri Lankan chicken yet?
I have had Sri Lankan fish curry so far, and other
delicacies that
you have. Yeah, it's good. Yeah, so I my family, the area that my grandparents and stuff are from is like a fishing village type area. So there's a lot of fish around here, crab, things like this. So it's good. A lot of good seafood.
But the spices they use, is it like the Sri Lankan chicken? Is it the same kind of flavor?
I think they use the same kind of spices through all the food, so it's all kind of fresh spices.
Now I'm
all
hungry.
Spices.
All right, let's get straight into it, because there is a lot to unpack today. Let's start with this beautiful, lovely lady now. She's no longer, I know
Mm,
people treat her like she's a little girl, but she's, I think,
yeah,
22 or 23 now. It
yeah,
doesn't. It seems like she hasn't gotten her protein because she does look exactly the same as she did when she was 14 and skipping school.
yeah.
So this is the tale of Greta Thunberg. Everybody's realised that we've been saying her name wrong the whole time now. I've
I've
been
noticed
saying
that actually.
Yeah, I've been saying Thunberg. I didn't realise it's Thunberg. Um, she is she. I guess this is how it started, right? Let's watch her video explaining what this brave, selfless climate warrior was up to.
Hello, I am currently standing on the Madeleine, the ship that on Sunday, June 1st, will attempt to again sail towards Gaza and to try to break the siege and open up a humanitarian corridor by aid like food and medical supplies. The last time we attempted this, about a month ago, the boat Conscience that we were about to board, just a couple of hours before we were planning to board and set sail, it got bombed twice, and all evidence suggests that it was Israel who did it.
Oh my God.
So now we are here in Catania, outside of Sicily, to try to continue our mission to try again. Because currently we are watching a systematic starvation.
I just want to point out when she says all evidence, like it probably, I'm not denying it was the Israelis, but what evidence besides the fact that it was bombed is she
Yeah,
referring to? All
that's
evidence
right.
points to, so that you have nothing except for the fact that it was bombed.
Yeah,
Of 2 million people, a live stream genocide, and the world's silence is deadly. That is why we have to keep trying everything we can, even if the odds are against us.
Sorry to keep pausing it because it's just so funny. The world's silence, literally all we've heard about
yeah.
since
It's all everyone
October
talks about.
2023 is about Gaza. So what world
Yeah.
silence are you talking? If this is world silence, I'm afraid to hear what world voicing their concerns with Israel sounds like.
Mm.
To try to protest and do everything we can to stand against Israel's atrocities and war crimes, and to support and stand in solidarity with the people of Palestine. So keep your eyes on deck, continue flooding the streets, organize, boycott, and do everything in your power to stand for Palestine.
There you have it, a
So
noble mission.
yeah, many things wrong with it. Obviously, first of all, we know of many verified humanitarian corridors opened up by many international organizations and countries who are involved in this. It's verified. There's trucks going in. There's all types of good things going in. Yes, maybe the distribution of that is somewhat complicated by the involvement of Hamas and other things that those things are happening in that area. But to kind of talk like, they are the ones who are going to, be brave and open up this humanitarian corridor through the sea, through the shipping lanes. It's just complete theatrics and, and nonsense. So she's really taken up that activism thing to the next level, where she knows there's a group of people that no matter what facts and evidence and reality you put in front of them, they will believe these things. I saw online many people commenting and supporting her, saying that this is so brave what you're doing to open up this
And
humanitarian
people that
corridor. Like, it's
hated
so
her
needed.
before, and people
And
who
people that
called
didn't
out
like her
her,
before. That's true.
people who called out her fake climate activism, which suddenly it seems like has all but disappeared because obviously she's fixed that problem, and now
Yeah.
she's on a sailboat. By the way, if you notice, if you looked at it, I saw lots of videos of it. There was no sails up. It was running on diesel. So she's fixed the planet, and now she can once again use diesel to float to Gaza.
Yeah.
Um,
But yeah, look, I think is Israel themselves on this particular issue, because look, they are coming into a war zone at the end of the day, and there are complications now when you have people like Thunberg and other activists kind of coming into this area where they could potentially be hurt inadvertently. Who knows what could happen, right? And then the world's eyes would be on. A lot of people wouldn't blame Thunberg for going into a war zone, with like a couple of kilograms of rice or whatever she's taking. They would put their, blame towards Israel again. But I think Israel did the best thing that they could do in terms of PR to clash with these kind of activists by calling it the Selfie Yacht. I think.
We're going to get to that in a second.
We're going to get to that, yeah. But the brilliance of that whole kind of pushing back against what these activists are doing with the same type of language and rhetoric to kind of show people that this is what this is, I think it did a lot to damage the cause of Thunberg. And of course, I mean, we're probably going to go through the series of things that happened as she got close to the shore, because it was a build-up, kind of like a bit of like a movie script. We had that UN person, Albanese, on like a live stream with them. So there's a lot of elements and moving parts involved in this PR campaign, really, to highlight their particular type of activism. I don't think they're going to make any difference besides the fact that they wanted to. I think they actually wanted to be stopped by Israel. That's my honest feeling about it. They wanted some type of thing to happen. They'd prepared videos and stuff to go out if something happens to them, and all these kind of things. So I think they went in with that mind frame that the best outcome here is if there is some type of escalation with Israel, they bomb the thing, or they have to, jump on it and shoot or something like this. Like, that's kind of what they went for. It sounds insane, because whatever they took or whatever they were taking to Gaza would not make any difference whatsoever in terms of humanitarian aid. It just it's nothing.
Just to clarify for the person that's commenting, Albanese was on a live stream with Greta. Yes, it's not Prime Minister Albanese. It is the UN Albanese. That's
other
same,
Albanese.
Same thing. I think they were both born to the same single mum. But all right, so they went on that noble, brave trip and hoping for either some sort of. This is what next happened after a lot of selfies and a lot of short videos from their trip on. So that was the 1st of June. So then about a week later, probably the 8th or 9th of June, we have the next moment. But once again, just before we go to that, let's just read our super chats. Like I said, we will. That's just a super chat. Thank you, Jimmy, for the support. Appreciate the super chat. That's a super chat on YouTube. You guys make this all possible, so really appreciate it. And here's one. You gonna read
That's
it?
True, yeah.
Magnum
thanks for super chat. Greta would not last days in Gaza. 100%. I mean, these guys would not last. No.
And if you follow me on Twitter, I was advocating letting her in. Let her have the reality check she needed. Let her see how Gaza actually is, not because of Israelis, but because of Hamas. They're not the most tolerant people. I just, spoiler alert. Anyways, thank you guys for the super chats. Let's go back and watch next what happened in on this ship.
Please, go to your places. Ditch the phones.
So if you can hear in there, it's a bit broken up, but the group organizers, whoever's leading this brave flotilla, is telling all the activists to ditch their phones. And you can see here.
Phones need to go.
They're passing the phones, you can see here. And they're throwing them overboard before the Israelis get on board.
Guys, any people needs to go down. That one is another phone there.
Sign. Mike, Romeo, Alpha, Hotel, MMC number.
Yes. Don't shoot.
3, 2, 0, 5, 7.
And just to point out how much propaganda there is and false propaganda around all these stories is. So that ditch the phone here, where you heard here. Sorry, I fixed the audio just because it was going through that filter. Yeah,
Please, go to your places. Ditch the phones. Okay.
So it's clear here that their organisers are telling them to ditch the phones, but within hate groups of Israel, they were acting like it was the Israelis instructing them to throw their phones overboard.
Yes, I saw that as well.
Yeah, it was them trying to get rid of any evidence. They knew that the Israelis, if they got a hold of the phones, obviously they're going to go through the phones.
Yeah. I mean, possibly they would have gone through the phones if they wanted to, but that just shows you the insane level of, why would Israel, military want them to get rid of their phones and destroy evidence? Like, it makes no sense that people put these wild conspiracies up there.
Exactly, but it's all about how evil they make them do everything, even throw away their phones from the selfie yacht.
Until now, it's not escalating. It's okay.
Consign Mike, O'Neill, Alpha, Hotel, 8.
Oh.
Number 232057. 7. Condition 1 degree.
Calm down. Calm down, everyone. Calm down. Everything's gonna be alright. Calm down. Wait.
Zach comments, was throwing the phones in the water to hide the connection to Al Jazeera. Probably. Listen, like all the Israelis would have got out of that is the probably embarrassing connections they have with external forces that are helping.
Who are helping them coordinate, of course.
Coordinate and fund this. Yeah.
Yeah.
And here is the... Okay, wait, before we watch this part of it, I think we should quickly have a look at... So, Greta had a pre-recorded message for... So, right before they ditched the phones, a pre-recorded message for if the Israeli army boards.
Yeah.
And this is what they... So, they must have just hit publish. It must have been in a draft. Publish this message.
My name is Greta Thunberg and I am from Sweden. If you see this video, we have been intercepted and kidnapped in international waters by the Israeli occupational forces or forces that support Israel. I urge all my friends, family and comrades to put pressure on the Swedish government to release me and the others as soon as possible.
So there we have it. I just
want to say complete theatrics. Like even to have the gusto to write something like that about being kidnapped when we've seen what kidnapping looks like.
Exactly. So the point in this context, it's even that much more wild.
Yeah.
So this is what the kidnapping looked like, and for those of you who remember I'm not going to play it here because on some of these platforms you're actually not allowed to because it's so graphic. What real kidnapping looks like, compare it to these visions. So water, sandwiches.
I like how they're taking it as well.
Yeah, they're not.
They're like, yeah, we're hungry. We're performative activists. We'll eat.
Look, smiling.
There's no hunger strike. It's like, oh, finally.
We are masking our face right now. We have quadcopters right above our heads, the most dangerous ones, and they are. I don't know what this is. I'm so sorry. We don't see anyone coming. We don't know what this is. If this is paint or some chemical.
Chemical.
No idea, but please sound the alarm.
The maritime zone of the coast of Gaza is close to naval traffic.
So firstly, like what's happening there? It's all theatrics, like you say. So like they're trying to they're like taking videos. Oh my God, there's some chemical because nothing happened. They needed something to dramatize it and garner world support. And I think like you're right. When it came to how Israel handled it, it was probably to me second best. I think the best would have been let him in. Let him in, and also let people see.
I get that. Yeah.
Let people see also when they get to Gaza, like what are they going to do with this little bit of like what were they actually going to do when they arrived there? It would have all been a joke. It would have been. Anyways, Israel chose to intercept it. Fine, 100%. Understand. Good on them. And I think the way they did it was brilliantly because it showed that they were just dying for something to make Israel look bad, and Israel only looked responsible and was treating them like, okay, little celebrities.
Yeah, look, this is the thing, right? I understand the argument of letting them go there and, suffer the consequences of their decisions. But at the end of the day, it's a war zone. Israel has to control the territorial areas which they're in control of. You let one boat through, what? They're going to have more celebrity Selfie yachts, coming through, wanting to land in Gaza
yeah,
and do
true.
their own things. Like you got to nip that in the bud. So if it was America, if it was Australia, they would protect their international borders and the sovereignty of their, sea and all this kind of stuff. During wartime, they would definitely do that and intercept these type of boats. So I think what they did was actually assist these young people. And I'm reading some comments of people saying, "Oh, well, they're noble and they're brave and stuff." No, it's stupid what they're attempting to do because it does absolutely nothing. So it's important that I think Israel stopped them and stopped potentially from them being used as who knows what. Who knows the type of people under the desperation of what is happening in that area right now may have decided to use Thunberg and a couple of others as human shields or as hostages in a weird way. Like you don't know what could happen, especially after you've seen the depravity of some of the things which have happened in Gaza to little children and babies that they've kidnapped from Israel during October 7th. So you don't know. We never know what those things can be, and you can't leave that possibility open. So they had to stop them. They treated them like respectfully, as much as respectfully as you could. Of course, this comes at an expense as well to deal with these type of nuisances, but they've done that. And that is, I think, any country would have done that to stop this type of thing from escalating, because you cannot have a situation where you have Instagram folks and, TikTok activists
Influencer,
hiring
yeah.
yachts. They got lots of money these days, these TikTok people, hiring yachts and, coming into Gaza to get likes. Like, that's kind of what they're doing. So they had to nip it in the bud.
Yeah.
Blockade. If you wish to deliver humanitarian aid to the Gaza Strip, you're able to do so through the port of Ashdod via the established channels and distribution centers.
So this is just the online track. Anyways, okay. So they basically told him, you can give your aid if it's not just a PR stunt. You can give your aid through the established port in Ashdod, which I think eventually Israel says that they did give the, as many people are describing in the comments here, the trolley load of
whatever they hadn't eaten themselves, they said.
I think you alluded to this before, and I think that Israel's response was flawless. So this was the official post. Good morning to all our followers. The State of Israel published this. This was the bet. They won the meme war here. In case you missed it, the selfie yacht. That was what they called it. Like the whole time they were just calling it the selfie yacht, which is just hilarious because it's so true, and it's a great term to describe it. The selfie yacht is safely making its way to the shores of Israel. The passengers are safe and were provided with sandwiches and water, and are expected to return to their home countries. Their tiny amount of aid wasn't consumed. The tiny amount of aid that wasn't consumed by the celebrities will be transferred to Gaza through real humanitarian channels. More than 1,200 aid trucks have entered Gaza from Israel within the past 2 weeks. Close to 11 million meals were transferred by the GHF, which is the new distribution thing that stops Hamas from stealing it, directly to civilians in Gaza. There are ways to deliver aid to the Gaza Strip. They do not involve provocations and selfies. And then they put up the photo of Greta Thunberg. Look at her face. She's in love. That is the face you make when you're in love.
Yeah, she's very happy about getting that bun. And again, people in the comments are, not all in agreement with our commentary on this, Avi. They're saying it's international waters and this and that. But I think the point still stands that you cannot have this happening. If you think that Thunberg and her merry band of celebrities rocking up in Gaza would have changed an outcome of whatever disagreement you might have that's happening there, it's not. It's not doing anything. And this is kind of what had to happen. And I think any civil society would expect a military to respond in this way if you have civilians coming on these type of missions, especially if they're, openly saying that this is what we're doing. If they really wanted to get this aid into the country, they would have gone dark. No one would have known about it. They would have tried to get into the country without anyone knowing about it. And the first video you would have seen from them would have been from them either being intercepted or on the shores of Gaza. Not this whole theatrical, hey guys, we're going, it's day one, follow along the journey. It's just complete ridiculousness. And no one should take that seriously as a humanitarian thing that they're doing. It's all self-gratification. It's this era of, grandizing. Greta Thunberg really thinks that she can make a difference there, and you can't. No one individual, Trump, all these people have not been able to make a difference really dramatically to what's happening on the ground there.
It's the definition of virtue signal. It was one big virtue signal for internet clout. The whole climate activism has kind of run its course. People are sick of that. It's not gaining the popularity that it did 10 years ago, especially when she was a little child. So she's upped her game. And for those in the comments that support it, I dare say most of them wouldn't be behind Greta if it was any other two nations. Like if it was any other nation. It's just Israel. And yes, it's popular online to hate on Israel, and there's nothing that they can do right. All I got to say is Israel makes a lot of mistakes. This was not one of them. I think they played this perfectly. Let's get to before we get to Trump's response and the final ending to that saga. Let's read a couple of these super chats here. Thank you.
Thanks, Michael Morris. Why don't you talk about millions of Indians that have come to Australia in the last few years? 99% of them don't build or do anything that provides intrinsic value to Australia. What's your take? I'm guessing that's directed towards me. I will speak for the people coming from the subcontinent. Look, there is a lot of immigration from the Southeast Asia, particularly from India. A lot of international students. So that particular block of people are coming as primarily international students, and there's restrictions on the amount of work that they can do and the types of jobs that they can do. So I've seen some of these students. I mean, they're not living in I know there's lots of commentary about them, but some of them are living in like really horrid conditions in these kind of share houses and stuff. This whole experience around international education in Australia, it's not this romanticized idea of like going overseas and traveling and you're doing like a 1-year study in, Harvard or something. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of the romanticized view we have of international education. But the way that Australian universities have set this up, it's literally like this kind of sweatshop university financial back and forth where they're just getting money through this and they don't really care. And you're seeing the impacts of that because you are having a lot of students coming through. Australians universities are profiting, and it's also having wider impacts on Australian society. But then there is also migration from Southeast Asia, like people that come here, permanent residents that become citizens. And I think a lot of them, if you look around, besides what that comment was saying, they are actually running businesses. If you go to certain areas, you'll see they've taken over a lot of the shops and establishments that were there. These are people that work, and they send their children to schools, they buy homes, they save money, they do things in a way that is not really the easy-go lifestyle that we have. I've grown up in Australia. I have this kind of that kind of mentality as well. They think beyond that in some respects, and they take advantage of the opportunities that they have in Australia. The Chinese do this. The Vietnamese have done this. And now the Indian population is doing this as well because they see the opportunities here now. How do you address that? Who do you blame? I don't know. I think mass migration is having an impact on Australia. And I think right now the Indian population is bearing the brunt of the criticism because you're seeing a lot more of them coming right now. But I don't think criticizing them is going to change that. What we are seeing is Labor, the Greens, attracting those populations and solidifying their power. So this is not going to change easily. And what I've always argued for is the fact that people on the right, conservatives who want to have a better migration system, have to get these people involved as well in that discussion for the future, because we have to let Indian Australians and these kind of people know that actually, if we don't control our borders, the life that you have today, that you've built in the last decade or so, won't exist in another decade because it just keeps getting worse. So it's in the interests of migrants as well that build lives in Australia to ensure that migration system is run in a proper way, because it impacts everyone.
Yeah. And I think, I think the conversation of migration is super important, and we should be able to have it honestly, frankly, and to be fair. For me, I think there's two parts of it. There's the number, and then there's the quality. And when I talk about quality, I'm talking about groups that can't integrate with our way of life or that are a threat to our way of life. I don't find Indians a threat to our way of life.
Yeah, look, I mean,
Like
Indians,
I've got a lot of
Indians brought, yeah,
Indian neighbors, and they're pretty cool and chill, and they're super
yeah.
nice to me when they come.
You have to
I
understand, like, yeah, the interest of the South Asians in general. People got angry about Vivek Ramaswamy when he talked about this issue during the H-1B visa thing. But the main interest of a lot of Indian families, even when my family came to Australia, was to put us through the education system, to send me to, to be a doctor, or a lawyer, or an accountant. Like, high education is the main priority of many Indian families for their children. So that happens for not for every Indian student or every Indian kid that's born here, or whatever, but majority of them are pushed down this path. So their upbringing is very different. That's why you don't see, Indian kids running around with machetes. It's not reported like, there's gang violence. They're studying, right? And what do they do? Eventually, they'll take high-paying jobs. This is happening all around the world.
And there are bad eggs. We see the bad eggs every once in a while.
Bad eggs. And I'm not saying it's like the good thing. I'm not saying that it has to happen and that's what Australia that's what Australia means. No, I'm saying that's kind of the reality of what's happening, and to set that backwards before we become like the UK, where you had, because what happens, Avi, naturally, right? You have a whole group of people, let's say even Indians, and you don't have an Australian identity or a culture that's promoted. Everything's a free-for-all. So yeah, naturally people will just be like, okay, cool, let's promote our cultural values. Even these other white Australians, they don't seem to care about their flag. There's these white Australians here saying, oh, we don't have a country, it's on our land, it's stolen land. They don't seem to care about the country. Okay, well, let's just build our own culture here. And that's what's happening. You're having enclaves, you're having them, running for political office and stuff like this in areas where they have dominance in that suburb of that cultural group. And you've seen the Liberal Party try to play this game. Labor's playing this game heavily. And that's just naturally what happens. And over time, the power base becomes more powerful. And you have the Sadiq Khans like you have in London. You can't get rid of that guy. You know what I mean?
But you see, like, Sadiq Khan is not an Indian. Let's just clarify. He's a Pakistani.
He's Pakistani, but I'm saying the same thing. When you have the population center and you have that power structure in place, people will generally, if you don't have a binding national unity or an identity around what it means to be Australian, they will create their own. And that's what's happening, unfortunately. I don't agree with it. I don't think it's a good thing.
No, and I think the conversation, like I said, is two or three parts to it. Is one, first the numbers, and then where are we getting them from? So if we're already agreeing to 20,000 a year, and then we have a choice between those from like India, who don't import an ideology that's also a threat to us, then I'm going to choose them over a group that does either show up in statistics, in crime statistics, in 5-10 years of being here, having kids that are, running around with machetes, chopping people up on the street, or ones that actually bring import ideologies that are some sort of threat to our way of life. I'll choose them over the other one. But if you want to have the conversation about immigration in general, yes, I think we have a problem. We're letting way too many people into the country, and that in itself is threatening the demographic of Australia, and we're not protecting it. So two things can be true at once. And so,
100%. And for me, like, it's weird when I go to parts of Melbourne, and everyone there looks like me. I mean, like, I'm just saying, like,
what a
they
horrible
look
part
like
of
me.
Melbourne.
But there's like, if you go to Melbourne City looks like a cosmopolitan part of like China. Parts of it, like the whole street of Elizabeth Street is Chinese stores. I'm not saying anything wrong with it. You can go to Swanston Street, it's all like Chinese. But
the question is, how do we want Australia to look in 10, 20, 30, 40 years? And I think we're losing, the old... you've got to kind of go rural now. You've got to go out to the country to get that vibe of the Aussie, the true blue Aussie local pub, and that is sad. I understand why people are sad to see that, to see us lose that. So if we want to have that honest conversation, we need to talk about stopping immigration in general.
100%. I don't want to live in India. I want to live in Australia.
Yeah, exactly. I think people that come from India don't want to live in India. That's why they came here. Because if they wanted to live in India, they would have stayed in India. And that's a thing that even a lot of migrants agree with as well. I talk to a lot of... I've met a heap of Indians that are like... They're prouder of Australia than many white Australians are. Because they're excited and they've got gratitude for what they've got here. And they don't want to see it go down the drain either. All right, I think we smashed that comment. Thanks for
We'll move
the
on.
super
Yeah.
chat. I don't know if it was just an attack on Rukshan. If it was, I support it.
This is from Jason. Jason, thanks, mate. 200 truckloads of aid have been sent into Gaza in the last 2 weeks, and their boat was carrying less than one. That's true.
It's true.
I mean, it's all documented. It's not like lies. It's all documented by international organizations who disparage Israel continuously. So it's not like favorable organizations to Israel. Like these are on the ground organizations who are getting in aid trucks.
Next one, Samuel.
Samuel, thanks, mate. I heard Greta liked Bamba for the win. No BDS.
So Bamba is actually a really interesting Israeli what do they call it? Like chips. What do you call it? What do you call that? Like what would you call a pack of chips? Like a snack. A snack,
snacks,
right?
Yeah. Okay.
And it's so Bamba is a peanut butter based snack, and it's actually the reason why there's studies into this as to why Israel has, I think, the lowest peanut in the Western world, lowest peanut allergy in the world, because they feed this to kids are fed this as babies. So sidebar. Anyways, there's been a lot of memes about her getting Bamba, and there's like, now with AI, everyone's like doing, she's got a little dummy in her mouth with a pack of Bamba. It's super funny. The memes on this whole situation has been hilarious because Israel handled it so well, and the other side have struggled to really maintain the outrage because they looked silly at the end of it, and that's why I think Israel did such a good job. You have to read this one. It's a great comment.
Simon K, thanks for the super chat. RV Israel 1 Gusty Dude from Muhammad Hijab at Speaker's Corner in UK to the streets of Melbourne. Thumbs up.
Can you read that one again?
No, mate, I read it once. Strong RV representing Israel.
Thank you, Simon. Thank you so much, guys, for the super chats. Like I said, we'll read all the super chats. The rest of the comments on YouTube are scrolling naturally by themselves. So even if you hate on us, they will come up on screen because I can't control them. So enjoy it. Have a blast. So if you just want your
Someone's written why do all Indians always staff the petrol stations? I'm telling you now, Indians are buying up the petrol stations. All the franchises you're seeing are owned by Indians. So that's why there's staff that are being put there as Indians, because they are hiring Indians. Like, this is happening. It's going to happen more and more. And it's unfortunate, but a lot of businesses are being bought up by Indians and Chinese, and it's happening in the background. And people disparage them and say, oh, they're poor and they're like third worlders and stuff. No, they're coming here. A lot of them are very wealthy, either coming from India or they've made their wealth here, and they are buying up franchises, buying up businesses, and setting themselves up. And it's a lot of us who are growing up with the more easygoing Aussie attitude. A lot of people aren't seeing what's happening in front of their eyes. And I try to make comments about this and highlight this a lot. And I think, Avi, you do it here as well. But I spend a lot of time talking about this topic. I'm pretty passionate because I do think there is a power shift going on, and Australians, people that think like you and me, Avi, we're kind of losing a bit of that power.
We are. The last election proves it. We are definitely losing that power. All right, back to the story we were covering. Guys, thank you for the super chats. And just a reminder, whatever platform you're watching on, but especially YouTube, hit the subscribe button, hit that notification bell so you get our lives when we go live. And I have been doing plenty of lives lately. All right, let's get back to Trump's reaction to this international incident, the kidnapping.
Do you have a message for Greta Thunberg, and did she come up on your call with the Prime Minister today?
Well, she's a strange person. She's a young, angry person. I don't know if it's real anger. It's hard to believe, actually, but I saw what happened. She's certainly different. Anger management. I think she has to go to an anger management class. That's my primary recommendation for her.
Kidnapped by Israel, as she says? Was she kidnapped?
I find it. I think Israel has enough problems without kidnapping Greta Thunberg.
And secondly, are you going to
Is that what she said? She was kidnapped by Israel?
Yes, sir. Are you going to get rid of the Tesla and the Starlink service that you have here at the White House?
I didn't even clip it there, but
yeah,
I don't even know what
so funny. And the whole history of Greta, right? That's like the whole thing was that she kind of frowned at Trump, and that's kind of what blew her up, right? Otherwise, who would have really cared about Greta? It was that whole moment where she frowned at Trump, and now it's come full circle where Trump's just like, yeah, I think she needs like anger management. She's a bit, not all there these days. It's hilarious when you consider it in the context of everything that's happened over the last few years with Greta and Trump.
Yep. Now, just before we end that part, I just want to find if I could find. I thought I'd found a report.
Well, how do they end up? What's happening to Greta now? I think people want to know the end.
I'll get to that. But before we get to that, let me just see if I can find a report on the missing bit. Watch. Let's just see if I can pull up a report that gives us the one bit that I was missing. Here we go. Okay, so there's this.
Well, he's going to force the activists to watch the atrocities of October 7th, which is, of course, the Hamas-led attacks that sparked this current war in Gaza.
Now, Israeli forces have taken command of a charity boat on its way to Gaza carrying humanitarian aid, and the Swedish climate activist Greta Thunberg is on board. She shared the following on her social media.
My name is Greta Thunberg and I am from Sweden. If you see this video, we have been intercepted and kidnapped in international waters by the Israeli occupational forces.
Based correspondent, and she joins me now. Gabrielle, hi.
Hi.
Thanks for being with us. What do we know about where this yacht and indeed the people on board it now are?
So I'm hearing now from Israeli sources that the boat or the yacht has been commandeered and taken into Ashdod, which is a port in southern Israel. And it has, in fact, docked. That's, within the last half an hour or so. We know that it was boarded by Israeli special forces, by commandos, around Port Said, which is about 110 nautical miles away from the Gaza Strip, away from the target of their pilgrimage. What we just heard from Greta kind of showed that the activists on board, there were 12 of them, were preparing to be intercepted by Israel and really knew that their mission to Gaza, to bring humanitarian aid to Gaza and to raise awareness of the plight of the Palestinians who have been under blockade for for over a decade, in fact, but a trickle of aid has begun to come in since March. Their efforts to raise awareness have been successful, but they, of course, knew that they weren't actually going to get into Gaza. Israel was never going to allow that, and Israel stated that from the beginning of their mission, which started on Friday. Israel's foreign ministry has been calling it the selfie boat full of celebrities. Israel seems relatively happy to be having this argument as well.
Yes, that's a good point.
I think they wanted to show, for Israel, it's a way to show how the international media, how pro-Palestinian activists, particularly Europe, is against Israelis. I think it's a way of showing that there's some kind of bias against them, that they aren't on Israel's side when it comes to the war. And we can see that as well in the Israeli Defense Minister, Israel Katz, he's going to force the activists to watch the atrocities of October 7th, which is, of course, the Hamas-led attacks that sparked this current war in Gaza. They're going to show these activists a video of what took place on October 7th, 2023. And that's their way of saying, this is our narrative, and you need to watch that as well. Yeah, no, indeed. Well, look, turning to the probably...
So yeah, that was essentially news. I don't know. I was trying to look up.
She's. I believe they didn't want to watch the video. So I believe they refused to watch the video, or they kind of closed their eyes or whatever, something like this. I've seen different variations of the story, and the last of it is that Greta Thunberg has been deported.
Yeah, well,
Israel
I'll show you the photo of that. Let's just see. Did Greta Thunberg watch the
unceremoniously deported on a plane out of the country?
We've got that. But do we have an actual? All right, wait.
I don't think she watched it.
Let's see. BBC, which is a Greta fan, Israel hater. They say Israel. France said 5 of the 6 activists had refused to sign deportation orders, and now would be brought before an Israeli judicial. Hold on. So you know what? Well, we'll look at the photo first, and then let's just see what the reports are on it. So, the Israeli Foreign Ministry gives us this beautiful look. Greta Thunberg departed Israel on a flight to Sweden via France. There she is, the brave warrior. She still looks like she's like 12, I've got to say. And so just think about her carbon footprint to achieve what? This whole story, so if she cares about the environment, they ran that diesel boat to nowhere. Then obviously all the diesel that was involved with the chopper and for the military operation to bring them back to Israel. For her and her comrades, or the ones that have signed, so she signed the deportation orders, obviously, to jump back on a plane to go home. For what? What did they achieve? Because sitting as somebody that's unashamedly pro-Israel, I think that this has been the best PR Israel has received in months. So they haven't helped their cause. They've helped Israel, in my opinion. I just feel that this has been a good moment for us.
I think I echo some of that sentiment. I think this kind of brand of activism doesn't sit right. A lot of people can see right through it. I know some people can't maybe distinguish between their particular view on the conflict and what Greta's doing, but like you said, a lot of people that don't like her for other things support her on this. Weirdly, because nothing's changed about Greta. She is still Greta, the activist. So I think overall, a lot of people have seen right through it. It's this nuisance activism. It's you know what it kind of is like when those climate activists, they go into like a museum and they throw paint on like the Mona Lisa or something. Like it achieves absolutely nothing. It's behind some sort of protective glass. They just clean it up. They get their video out there and clicks or whatever, and life goes on. I am sure when you dissect this in the future, the Thunbergs of our generation will talk about this moment as some sort of heroic thing that Thunberg did. This story will be rewritten. It will be more dramatized. They might do a little Netflix series. You know what I mean? It's like it's one of these things. It's not really anything meaningful, but it works in this kind of activism space.
She doesn't look particularly happy with the outcome of it, and maybe the reality of the kind of response that she was having.
She was embarrassed and humbled, I think, and the Israeli kind of military forces did that to them as well. I think, she probably sees herself as a victim now, more so than before.
Yeah, so the BBC is reporting, just before we end this part of the segment, the BBC is reporting, so Thunberg deported, Israel says, I love how they have to say that, after Gaza boat intercepted. Israel says it began to deport 12 pro-Palestinian activists, including Swedish campaigner Greta Thunberg, whose Gaza-bound aid boat was seized by Israeli forces in the Mediterranean on Monday. The Israeli Foreign Ministry said Thunberg, I got to train myself, but it's like the whole world is retraining themselves on how to pronounce her name. It's so weird that no one knew how to pronounce it. Departed Tel Aviv on Tuesday morning on a flight to France after she agreed to be deported. But France said 5 of the 6 French activists had refused to sign the deportation orders and will now be brought before an Israeli judicial authority, which is interesting. Like, why would you refuse to be deported? I guess they just want to make a spectacle. They're not happy with the outcome of it. They want more of a spectacle. Their yacht. You can see that this is the BBC because they didn't quote
Selfie Yacht,
the Israeli government, the Selfie Yacht. The Madeleine was intercepted while they tried to deliver symbolic. I like how they put that in quotations, like inferring that it wasn't symbolic. What else was it but symbolic? It clearly wasn't enough aid for anyone. Amount of aid to Gaza in defiance of Israel's naval blockade to highlight the humanitarian crisis there. The Israeli Foreign Ministry dismissed it as as a selfie yacht and announced on Monday night that the activists had been transferred to Tel Aviv's Ben Gurion airport following their arrival at the port of Ashdod on Monday night. Those who refuse to sign deportation documents and leave Israel will be brought before a judicial authority in accordance with Israeli law to authorize their deportation, it said on X. On Tuesday morning, the ministry said Greta Thunberg just departed here, blah, blah, blah. I just want to see if anyone says anything about... did they say anything? No one says it here. I wonder if Israeli sources. Let me just do a quick search on.
Yeah, I'll just. Someone in the comments is saying if Russia did to Greta what Israel did, would you guys have the same view? I think of course. If some boat wanted to go into Ukraine through the Crimea,
what was the question? What was the question? I missed that.
Like if Russia intercepted Greta or someone like that while they were trying to get into Ukraine to raise awareness or something, like it's the same thing. Like
exactly.
Who are these individuals? Like, why are these activists? It makes no sense, especially the spectacle way of doing it. Like I said, there's been all types of people that have snuck into countries for activism. They could do that. They didn't do that. They did it all for show, and completely. I don't think they were cut out for being in a war zone either. Like, you saw the people on the boat, they freaked out. And they were, this is not a children's like a playground going into that area, right? It's active war zone, and there's a lot of things happening there. And these are not people that you want to have in that environment, because it's dangerous for the rest of the world, because you can even create even further escalations of a conflict by having these celebrity activists there. So I think any war zone they shouldn't be entering, to be completely honest.
All right, I'm doing a last-ditch attempt, just doing a ChatGPT search to see what ChatGPT...
Mate, Greta did not watch the video, I'm telling you.
Where did you see that? Can you give me a source?
She would not watch the video. You think Greta Thunberg would watch that video?
No, I just want to see the source for it. I don't not believe you. I'm sure they didn't. I'm sure there would be a photo. That's probably what they were most afraid of, is a photo of them watching it. And this is the footage. This is the October 7 footage that was never... Like, there's this footage that they showed journalists, which is like...
yeah, it's like that 40-minute long video.
Yeah, which is like the footage that out of respect to many of the victims, they didn't publish, which was horrific stuff. I've just got to fix my display here. Well, it's crashing out on me, so it's not... It really doesn't want to tell me. Even ChatGPT is struggling... Are you there?
Yeah, because no one's got the source on that. No one's got the details on that in particular, whether they watched it or not. So
it'll be interesting. All right. I think we've... I'll let this... Why is this not letting me get me out of here? Oh, ChatGPT has got me cornered.
ChatGPT has taken over?
It's taken over my computer. All right, let's move on to the next... let's just do the last super chats on this particular issue. Boom, read that one for us.
Right, 9, thanks for the super chat, mate. For the Greta Anger Management Fund. Greta's actually, if you look into the history of Greta, I know some people have made it in the comments, she is very a wealthy activist. Activism.
How's she wealthy?
On her scale, her parents and her, and they're pretty well off. So a lot of this is,
How are they wealthy?
I don't know the whole story, but there's a few people that have talked about it in detail about how they
found it. I found. Boom, 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 boom. You were right. Greta Thunberg and crew refused to watch video of Hamas's atrocities on October 7th. Sky News host Chris discusses Greta Thunberg and crew, a flotilla refusing to watch depicting the atrocities. Let's just quickly watch this. I'm interested to see what they say about it, because that's a pretty important piece of the puzzle. Why would you refuse to watch that if you care so much about this conflict?
Reports out of Israel tell us the crew of the so-called aid flotilla vessel, the Maldine, including Greta Thunberg, are at Ben Gurion Airport about to be deported. The Israeli Defence Minister did arrange for the group to be shown a video depicting the atrocities of October the 7th, but apparently once they knew what they were watching, these people refused to see the rest of it. They prefer to maintain their ignorance rather than bear witness to the horrors of Hamas. It seems incredible, although not entirely surprising, that these people whose actions provide indirect support to Hamas don't want to know what Hamas does. Now, what we show you from that day is incredibly sanitised. On television, especially at this time of the day, we can't show you anything of the grotesque cruelty and bloodthirsty violence that unfolded on that day. I've seen these videos. I've always believed it's my duty since October the 7th to know what I'm talking about. The last time I saw some of this material was a video I was shown in Israel by the Defence Force there a fortnight ago. Probably the same video they tried to show Thunberg and her mates overnight. If you want to have a view on the current war, you need to know what Hamas is. If you're going to know what Hamas is, you need to see the evidence. But these media grandstanders wouldn't even bear witness to the horrors of Hamas, even though Hamas clearly benefits from their activism. I mentioned last night how Greta Thunberg's claims that she was about to be kidnapped were sickening, given the real kidnappings at the start of all this. Here's a social media clip that makes that point very clearly.
Oh, let's see.
We have been intercepted and kidnapped, intercepted and kidnapped, intercepted and kidnapped, 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 and kidnapped.
Oh, shit,
I mean, that makes the point what we were talking about earlier. So
exactly. It's yeah.
Yeah, don't portray yourselves as
That's a good monologue. Anyways, that answers
victims
that.
when there are plenty of real victims.
That answers that question that we had. They refused to watch it, and you know what? Like, so often when we get into these discussions, people are like, "Show me the evidence. Show me the evidence." Well, here the people at the forefront of the campaign against Israel just blatantly refused to watch that evidence.
Yeah.
Last super chat on this issue. Thank you guys all for your super chats.
Thanks, Michael Morris. It was not an attack on Rukshan. Uber pays no tax. Yeah, I mean, I don't know
not
about
pay
the
tax?
exact. I don't know the exact makeup and how they do all this, but they do. There's a lot of loopholes that companies like this use. It's kind of exploitative, in terms of Uber and Uber Eats, and yes, there's lots of Indians and South Asians that work and on those apps. Yeah, it is what it is. I mean, it's open to it's a free market. Anyone can take up that job if they want to do it and do it. But more often than not, these individuals choose to do this type of work. It is what it is. There's no one stopping from anyone else doing this type of work.
All right, next part of the next issue. Let's talk about what's happening in America. We'll watch this first clip from earlier today.
California, Gavin Newsom, who's a Democrat, has sued President Trump over his deployment of the National Guard in Los Angeles against his wishes. He's accused Mr. Trump of seeking to manufacture a crisis. Rioting was sparked after the Trump administration sent immigration agents to detain unauthorized migrants in the city. President Trump says the move was necessary for law and order and that without it, LA would have been completely obliterated. Our correspondent John Sudworth is there. John.
Well, things are a little calmer, at least so far today. You can see the protesters here, I'd say no more than 100 or so, gathered outside this detention centre where some of the immigrants detained in those workplace raids are being held. And on this side, you can see the LAPD. Their numbers have been boosted today by reinforcements brought in from outside Los Angeles County. But the most contentious part of this picture is a little bit further over there. You can see the members of the National Guard stood by. And although things may be quieter here, they, of course, are at the centre of an escalating political storm between the president of this country and the governor of this state. There's now a huge police presence in this city, with reinforcements brought in as the authorities try desperately to contain the violence. Overnight, once again, protesters threw fireworks and the police responded with force, making a number of arrests. But an already tense situation triggered by the workplace raids and arrests of undocumented immigrants now has a complex political dimension. The National Guard, a reservist military force, is often used to respond to natural disasters and is normally called in by state governors. Not this time. For the first time in 60 years, a US president has ordered them in, while members of his administration warn that anyone who gets in the way, even senior politicians, face arrest.
Come after me, arrest me. Let's just get it over with. Tough guy.
It's a threat that's been met with a furious response from California's governor, speaking to MSNBC.
The hell are they doing? These guys need to grow up. They need to stop. And we need to push back. And I'm sorry to be so clear, but that kind of bloviating is exhausting. So, Tom, arrest me.
Then this from President Trump. Asked if the governor should be arrested, I would, he replied.
He's an incompetent governor. Look at the job he's doing in California. He's destroying one of our great states. And if I didn't get involved, if we didn't bring the Guard in, and we would bring more in if we needed it, because we have to make sure there's going to be law and order. You had a disaster happening.
Well, the streets of downtown LA are littered with the debris of last night's trouble. If you just, anywhere you look, you pick them up. You've got the Hundreds and hundreds of these baton rounds, rubber bullets, the canisters from which they've been fired, and also rocks, which we've seen protesters sometimes throwing at the police. It's quiet at the moment, but these officers have been drafted in from neighbouring police forces as this city braces for more trouble today. One sign of just how dangerous things have become.
We'll watch that in a minute. That goes into our next. That gets us our next. Sorry, yeah. What's your reaction to begin with?
Look, it is kind of apocalyptic style scenes in LA. A lot of the stuff that's coming out of the mostly peaceful protesting, if you were to watch any of the mainstream media who love to characterize it as mostly peaceful, or
when it's a protest they support, and we'll get to that soon.
When a protest they support, it's always mostly peaceful, and they try to ignore all the very obvious violence. And thanks to platforms like X, we are getting real-time updates of a lot of this destruction. Like, they are destroying hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of cars and property, private property, public property. They are throwing projectiles and trying to vandalize police cars, and obviously hurting officers as well. They are looting, of course. To protest against Donald Trump and ICE, you have to loot shops and steal sneakers. Of course, that's a part of the protesting. And it's just disgraceful, the stuff that's going on in there. And you saw a glimpse of Gavin Newsom, the governor of California. They kind of emboldened this behavior because they're kind of going toe-to-toe against the federal administration, against Trump. And it's really emboldening these people to stay out there more when they've lost control. So you got all these crazy elements. You got the LA police. You got other police from different parts of states coming in to help out as well. They've been overwhelmed. There's no respect given to them, even though they're going pretty hands-on, soft on this particular issue. They've lost control because of Gavin Newsom and the mayor as well of Los Angeles. It's a very incompetent mayor. I forgot her name, something Bass. And then on top of that, you got Trump now having to bring in the feds, the National Guard, and Pete Hegseth, the defense secretary, saying that the Marines, of course, are being deployed as well to kind of control this situation. Because what you are having, I think this is the biggest test for Trump in terms of his policy around immigration and to get that through. California being the biggest sanctuary city-state in the country where all the illegals literally are. This was always going to be the toughest fight, I think, for Trump and Homan to get rid of the illegals from that country. And this is where the biggest resistance is. And the resistance is not just from Antifa, the activists, and the Mexican drug cartels who are potentially funding some of this. It's also coming from the Democrats and the state government there as well. So it is an insane recipe for disaster. And you are seeing these scenes where Newsom and Trump and Vance are going toe-to-toe on X, right? You've probably seen these comments, Avi, where they're arguing about, who's done what. And, you don't need to come, we're going to sue you. All these kind of crazy stuff we'll touch on. And I just think it's going to get worse. And I think Trump is really being headstrong here. And they're not going to back down. I really feel like they're going to go through with this. And they want to get rid of these illegal immigrants. And you're seeing these people are not protesting against this, holding American flags. They're protesting holding Mexican flags. It is like a foreign entity declaring war on your sovereign nation.
Palestinian flags.
Palestinian flags.
When you're looking at all the kafirs, they're all wearing kafirs. I think there's a few points here. Like, I think the whole Newsom-Trump thing, I don't think the Democrats do not want Trump to succeed because Trump rallied on two things: tough on immigration and tough on law and order. And here we have a situation where it's a fight against both. So if Trump succeeds here, which by bringing in the National Guard, he's doing something, yes, the media is pointing out it's never been done before, because every other time it's escalated to a point where cities are burning. That's what they want. Newsom wants the city to burn so that they can blame Trump for stoking this kind of violence. That's what's going to happen. Yeah. They're going to end up letting it burn like they did during Black Lives Matter and then go to Trump, you see, this is what you caused by your outrageous racist policy or whatever. And Trump realizes this is a test. This is a test, one, to whether you can actually achieve your goals with immigration, and two, whether you can control the city, whether you can actually uphold law and order doing that. And I think he's going to win. I think the way he's handling it is actually right. He's copying all the condemnation from the right people around the world, including here in Australia. We're about to watch Turnbull. I'm assuming Turnbull's going to condemn Trump. I haven't actually watched it. It's his interview on it today and everything. But I'm sure because they're all barracking for Trump to fail. They want the violence. They want it. They want the city burning to prove a point. And I think like also like Trump's whole problem when Trump in the lead up to the election rallied to cut immigration, one of the biggest reasons was law and order. So isn't it funny that their way to respond to his implementation of the policy that he actually he promised is to become the exact thing he threatened they were. So like he said, we need to get rid of illegal immigration because look how much in the crime statistics, how many criminals were imported, blah, blah, blah. And so their way to fight Trump is what? To become absolute criminals under foreign flags.
Yeah, I mean they're proving his point. The optics do not look good for people outside of California. If Americans are watching, you're seeing these people with Mexican flags burning up cars and buildings and trying to hurt law enforcement. Like that's what it looks like. Again, optics are very important in something like this, and I don't think the Democrats are necessarily winning the optics war on this particular front, even though they're getting a lot of support from the mainstream media who are trying to frame this in a particular light. And like I said before, I think it's crucial that Trump actually has a result here that favors their particular policy on this issue, because this test will determine the rest of the immigration policies and all those issues going forward. Because if you can get rid of the illegal immigrants and deport them from the state of California, that is a massive part of that job done. Right? This is a problem.
Absolutely, and a compounding thing is also if you can stop protests turning violent or for destroying an entire city in California, then you're going to be able to do it anywhere. And that's why it is essential for Trump to bring in the National Guard. Remember all the previous protests that did turn violent, whether it was Black Lives Matter, whether it's a Palestinian protest, and you're seeing in these protests, it's the same people. It's the same people here also, maybe on top of those groups that are running it, like the Antifa and the pro-Palestinian groups. On top of that, you have genuine illegal, by definition, criminals that have joined into it because they feel like they're being targeted. So that there's
a cartel. There's a cartel element as well.
There is that element.
Criminal element, because a lot of the business of the cartels, like people need to understand this. Illegal immigration is, of course, part of their business. Human trafficking, that's one thing. But having porous borders, having this kind of open border type situation in the United States of America enables all types of things like drug trafficking and other criminality. So for them to keep the status quo is very important. So for cartels, these criminal entities from Latin America that have a lot of money, funding this type of chaos and kind of pushing back against Trump as well, in conjunction with Gavin Newsom, which is crazy, right? All these evil elements, really, of society, these rotten elements of society are working with the state government to kind of stop this from happening, which is America having its own sovereign borders, determining who is an American citizen, what rights illegals have in the country, which should really be none. They're saying they want due process and all this kind of nonsense, which is how they've stonewalled this issue for like decades and decades now through the court system and due process. And Trump's he came in saying all that is finished now. If you're an illegal immigrant, we're going to come, we're going to round you up, and we're going to get rid of you. And if you're a criminal illegal immigrant in the United States of America, you are definitely going first. And all of this kicked off because Homeland Security and Tom Homan, they're going after these criminal cartels, trying to break up into an investigation that they had, and they rounded up all these illegals, and they're trying to get rid of them. And as a country, that is the most important job that Donald Trump has to protect the nation of America and the interests of the citizens of America. And I don't think I can't hear anyone making a rational argument yet why the interests of illegal immigrants, especially criminal illegal immigrants, should trump the future of American citizens and their prosperity. There's no valid argument being made for it. So Trump is.
I was doing the debating, and like some people are saying, Well, no one has a problem with him targeting the criminal illegal immigrants, but here they were going to apparently what was it? Home
The
Depot.
factory,
Where they were working, and these guys are the ones that are actually working out one. But you know what? By definition, you're illegal in the country. If you're illegal, you're illegal. Like if people were illegal in Australia, I would be the first to say deport them. If they want to come back the right way. I know it's probably hard when you get deported from America. It's very hard to come back legally after that. But that's just, it is what it is. You made that decision when you crossed over illegally. You knew you were committing an offence, and he has every right to. I think most Americans support him deporting criminal illegals, but I think a lot also support. Anyways, the bottom line here in this case, I think this is a massive test for Trump. Some of the stuff Trump has done in the last month, maybe last 2 months, I don't know. I'm not sure if it was the right decision. I know he definitely campaigned on the tariffs. I can't tell you if I think it's a good thing or a bad thing yet. Time will tell. I think we have to give Trump a chance because he got voted in. He got the majority vote across the country, so he's got the mandate to do what he promised. But I'm not sure. I'm not completely sold on this one. I think this is a test. I think he's doing the right thing, and I think I'm going to bet he's going to win this fight if he keeps it up. If he doubles down, and if the local law enforcement don't get a grip on it, bring in more National Guard, he is going to win that fight, and that is going to send a message that you can both deport illegals and law and order.
The only problem I see, Avi, in this whole thing is, and I think again it comes down to optics, and it might make Trump change his mind. But if there is some interaction there between military forces, National Guard or the Marines, whatever, and God forbid some protesters, like American citizen, is hurt or shot or something happens, one of these type of interactions, that's going to be a major inflection point in that country, and it's going to really change. There's going to be a massive thing around that. So,
what do you mean?
I believe
you think if the National Guard ends up, let's say, killing somebody in the protests, you think that's going to be a turning point, and they're going to pull back?
That's when Trump was going to have to really either go all in.
I think Trump will go all in.
He's going to be forced to pull back, because that is kind of again, I can't read the minds of these people, but I feel like this is kind of what these activist class and the media and the states are going for by not backing Trump, because the more and more that California Governor Newsom doesn't support Trump on this matter, the more likely it becomes that there is an escalation of violence between these two groups. So Gavin Newsom's been putting up, tweets, photos of the U.S. military and the Marines or whatever camped out in, stadiums, saying, "Oh, look, they've just been sent here. They've been given no food. Look at them. They're just all sleeping here. Like, what are they doing? What's Trump doing?" So that military focus is really being honed in on. And on the flip side, we've had people commenting back saying, well, if you care about the military so much, give them nice hotels, give them food, give them shelter. They've come to help your state and help your police.
But they can't. They can't because all the hotels are full of illegals.
Exactly, right? If you can help the illegal immigrants, help the bloody Marines and the National Guard that are there to help you. It's crazy. So this escalation of violence is a very serious issue, serious problem, I think, for Trump if that happens. And they're going to have to be really careful in terms of how they deal with these violent elements.
What do you predict? What do you predict is going to happen?
I feel like there's still something more to come in terms of.
I think there's more to come, and I think that even if what you say plays out, I think Trump is going to double down, because he knows how important it is to win this fight for both those reasons. Read this super chat on the issue before we move on.
Yeah, super chat, Giovanni. Thanks for super chat again, mate. Nice to see you. Why do all leftists peaceful protests have fire? That is a very common theme. Whenever I see a peaceful protest, it is always usually the picture is a fire in the background.
And the media has no shame. They'll say mostly peaceful protest as it's burning behind them. It's wild. But you had peaceful protests during COVID that they called violent. You can't make this stuff up. All right, so let's go to the response from. 1 second.
And just in the comments, some people have made some cool points about the military, and I agree with this. I don't think the military cares about the people in the army, the boys in the army, the girls, whatever. They don't care about sleeping in some shed for a couple of days. Like, that's what they're trained for. This is a part of the training. It's not a big deal. They don't need 5-star hotels. So Newsom's just trying to play on the angle of the military and be like, Trump doesn't care about you. He doesn't care about anyone. He just cares about himself. and they're just being used, be thrown in. They're a part of the. Both sides are kind of using them in their own way. So that's what I mean. That the play out of how that works out, the National Guard rollout, is going to be the big thing that kind of determines how this goes.
I think it's I think it's going to be sweet as long as there's it doesn't play out a tension between the actual law enforcement, so the frontline LAPD, so the state police, and the National Guard. As long as there's no confrontation there, that's where there could be a massive problem. But I don't think that's ever going to happen. I think they support each other. They don't play into the politics. Also, I think the LAPD, the police themselves, because remember in the lead up to the election, I was there on the ground and I actually spoke to cops, and they support Trump because Trump supports them. Trump is like back the blue, whereas the state of California doesn't back their own police force. So I don't think you're going to see that be a problem. And I think that if the scenario that you kind of gave, I think even if that did happen, unless it's something clearly, obviously wrong from the National Guard, because we're going to get to what happened to that Aussie reporter, but that was LAPD. Yep. Remember, that is Newsom's guys, not LAPD. Trump's. Yeah. Okay, just read this. You got a super chat. Thank you. That's a YouTube super chat.
Thanks, Alan. When should people from other countries start staying in their country and making the changes they're needed so they want to live in their country? Look, I that's a great comment. And the problem here is, if Mexico is so great that during a protest like this that you carry the flag of Mexico because you're protesting against being sent back there, well, it shows that you have pride in Mexico. So why don't you go back to Mexico? Exactly. Like, I'm just saying, like, if you want to, say, oh, we're Americans, we're fighting for America, we belong here, carry the American flag. Like, carrying this kind of Mexican flag and, destroying federal buildings and throwing stuff at police officers doesn't help your cause. I don't think so. And look, online, people have made arguments like, oh, well, Mexico at one point, the territory of California was, briefly in the hands of Mexico after the Spanish, all this kind of history, colonial history of that era. But none of that matters. It's a part of the United States of America today, much longer than it's been a part of Mexico, what 20 years or something like that. And, at the end of the day, if you're in America and you want to be American and that's what you're fighting for, do it under the American flag at least. If you do it under the Mexican flag, go back to Mexico. You obviously love it there, and fix Mexico. Do that. So great comment.
All right, let's move on to the Australian reaction by one of our favourite prime ministers by a long shot. I'll speed it up because these guys are boring.
What do you make of what we're seeing in LA? Marines being called in, really a really dangerous situation.
Switch screens, Avi.
Well, it is exactly that. It's a very dangerous situation unfolding. And you can understand Governor Newsom feeling that Trump is trying to provoke a greater crisis there. I mean, this is the governor of the largest state in America, California, who Trump refers to repeatedly in social media as Governor News Scum. So that's this is what we've got to get our head around. This is a very different kind of president. And yes, there is a real unhappiness about these deportations. Seizing people who are undocumented immigrants and dragging them off with their kids left at school with no one to pick them up and so forth. It's not the kind of process that you'd expect in a country that we've always understood to be governed by the rule of law. But the concern is, and this is what Governor Newsom said, and I agree with him, the concern is that this is essentially a provocation. So,
go on.
I was going to say, like, it's crazy, right? Because the things you're saying, if you consider Australia's immigration policy, which is, I think, one of the toughest immigration policies in the world, we were shipping off people to some private island bought off some
under
other,
him.
Under him as well, I believe, some third world country, and shipping them off there into some sort of like, immigration constraint.
Which is what you should do, which I support.
Which is kind of the tough line stance that Australia took to protect its borders. So I think Australia's taken much stricter enforcement actions. The scale is smaller and it's harder to get here, but we're pretty tough when it comes to immigration, or we were at one point. So it's crazy hearing Australian prime ministers talking like this about Trump just trying to control.
But this is like partisan politics. The ABC brings on this guy who was a fake liberal. What do they call him? Liberal in name only.
Yeah.
So a lefty, somebody that hates Trump, just so that he can shit on Trump from the Australian perspective. But everything he says is complete and utter nonsense, especially coming from Australia. Like you said, coming from our Australian way of looking at immigration. We are the toughest. We are impossible. Like illegal. If you're illegal in Australia, you're getting deported. You're not getting in. They turn around boats.
American immigration policies, looking for tough immigration policies, they often quote the Australian experience as being one of the standout tough approaches to handling mass problems of illegal immigration.
The right, it's funny because the right point to Australia, they cite Australian immigration policy to point to somewhere where you go, look, it works there, we can do it there, just like the left point to our tough stance on firearms. It's funny how they both pick and choose what they like. Australia's tough rules about either. But yeah, so for this guy, who, by the way, in his own government did it, I bet you if we Google how many people got turned around under every Liberal government, they were super tough. That's the whole point of, like, even under this joker.
It's these are dangerous times in America. If you follow the American press and media generally, as I'm sure you do, and most Australians probably do nowadays, there are many people in America now, serious people, experienced people, who are concerned that America is slipping into a sort of a realm of authoritarianism, almost of tyranny, and that should be very concerning for us. So let's hope that common sense and the rule of law prevail.
The Prime Minister will likely meet Donald Trump on the sidelines of the G7. We expect that on Monday next week, our time. Do you think he should make any deal? What are the kind of guardrails around a deal? Because clearly Australia is trying to seek a reduction on tariffs. What should we be willing to negotiate on?
Well, that's a...
I just want to point out, I've just pulled up a report just to like look at it. And the first report, when you look up Turnbull migration, is 10-year low under Turnbull. He only took in like 20,000 people. Like this guy was tough on immigration. He was one of the worst prime ministers in our history. But for this guy to talk seriously about US immigration is beyond a joke. And the fact that the ABC don't even push back on that point, like, who are you to tell to preach anything about this subject?
Well, at one point they would have gone after people like Turnbull when he was turning around boats and sending people to Nauru or whatever. If he did do that under his term, like the other Liberal PMs, ABC would have been complaining about him, of course. But now it's we're going after Trump, we're bashing Trump. Let's forget all objectivity about the person we're interviewing and let him just spew this nonsense.
He's just saying what they want to hear.
Not much, I would say. The tariffs that Trump has imposed on Australia are an affront. I mean, we have a free trade agreement with the United States. They have a very big trade surplus with us.
I've had it. Like, we don't need to hear more. Now he's going on to the other subject. Okay, so that was Turntable. Actually, Sky did a good little piece because what you just heard Turnbull say there is, I'm sure you've also been watching what the American press has been saying about it. Yeah, it's funny. The American press, they've lied to us. And that's why we're so grateful that we have platforms like X where you can actually see raw footage from those protests that the media can't.
That's right.
So, but let's watch this quick thing. I was watching a minute of it. It was a pretty good piece from Sky.
So as we've seen much...
Shit. 1 second. Let me turn up this. I keep forgetting.
Violence erupting, cars being torched, protesters chanting F America. How does CNN describe it?
There's unrest. Let's start with there's protest, lawful protest, which is allowed in this country. There is some unrest, generally dealt with by local law enforcement, and if there needs to be state support through state police.
Some unrest, that's one way to put it. What about over on MSNBC?
I believe that the LAPD has this underhand, and they are very, very experienced in riot control. So this is something that they can handle. We do not have to have the National Guard here. We certainly do not have to have the Marines here. This is a manufactured crisis, and we do not need the Insurrection Act, and that is an understatement.
And what about ABC? Well, this ABC reporter sounds a bit like Gavin Newsom. According to her report, the riots are peaceful.
Demonstrations had been going on right outside the Federal Detention Center. Most of those demonstrators were very peaceful. They were chanting, they were shouting. People were driving by, honking their horns. And again, they were expressing their anger about the detention of so many immigrants at the Federal Center. Most of the the building, but at a certain point, some of the demonstrators got very close to the property. In fact, some of them went onto the property, started tagging the building, started banging at fences, and shortly after all that happened, the agents started firing off tear gas.
And here's some more coverage on ABC suggesting that law enforcement could be what's making this volatile, and ultimately these protesters are having some fun.
Large group of people, it could turn very volatile if you move law enforcement in there in the wrong way and turn what is just a bunch of people having fun watching cars burn into a massive confrontation and altercation between officers and demonstrators.
It's insane. It's an insane place, and the legacy media there is insane.
That is almost worse than the image of peaceful protests and mostly peaceful protests with the burning behind them. He literally said it's just some people having fun, and the problem is law enforcement ruining the fun that these poor people are having by burning cars.
Let them watch that. I don't know if you've seen that video of there's 6 or 7 Waymo, these self-driving cars all set alight in a row, worth $700,000 each, maybe each car, because there's lots of technology in there. That whole company has moved their entire fleet out of that area, just far away, because they're self-driving cars, robotic cars, are just being stopped and destroyed. So it's insane. They're destroying their own towns and cities. They're destroying their own transport systems. These people.
Well, what do they care? They're Mexicans.
Well, okay, there you go. No comment.
I don't actually. I think it's there's obviously a mix of Mexican, but there's obviously Antifa, which just want to destroy everything, tear the whole system down.
Yes, it's the black bloc. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, and then you have Ilhan Omar's daughter is a perfect example where she says from LA to Rafah, so they're just the Islamists that hate the West and hate everything that we stand for. So there's so many things at play here as to why these people are acting like this, but they're being enabled by the mainstream media. I'm going to keep watching this because this is great work by Sky just collating these clips, because it's insane that the media gets away with this.
Joining us now is president and founder of Strelmark, Hillary Ford.
Oh no, there we go. Those were all the clips.
But yeah, so many examples of that. You just got to jump on X, watch any of the mainstream reporting. You're seeing
even
massive acts of violence. Even in Australia, massive acts of violence, and the way that they downplay it is just insane.
Okay, speaking of reporting of the violence, and the interesting thing is I was actually listening to this reporter's reporting, this journalist reporting, so this Channel 9 reporter who's gone absolutely viral, Lauren Tomasi, who's been the 9 reporter on the ground there at the riots covering it. Now, I was listening yesterday to 3AW, hearing her report, and it was actually, it happened to be right after this, because I don't think she realized that this was such a major incident, and it was. But the way that, if you look at her coverage over the last few days, she has been exactly like the mainstream media there, really talking down. And Tom Elliott has actually, to his credit, like many issues, has said exactly, has been on point when it came to the reporting of what's happening in America, and he's supporting Trump in the way Trump's responding to it. But then obviously they're part of the Channel 9 family. He's brought this reporter on that's basically contradicted his opening to it.
Yeah.
Okay. So this reporter, in the context of that, who's been very much the media machine there that has supported the riots, but again, this doesn't necessarily hurt her stance, although she's been part of those that have, she's been, I've seen, she's been retweeting the governor, essentially her push is behind the governor's sentiment, which is that the National Guard shouldn't be there and it should just be LAPD, really, essentially.
Yeah.
Which is funny because this is what happened with her. Most people have seen this video, but we'll watch it anyways.
After hours of standing off, this situation has now rapidly deteriorated. The LAPD moving in on horseback, firing rubber bullets at protesters, moving them on through the heart of LA. You just shut the fuck up. You okay? I'm good.
All right, credit where credit is due. She did handle that like a trooper.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, she did. Yeah.
Like,
I mean, this is the thing. Like, Avi, like you've been in very similar situations, and I've covered very similar situations. And this is the thing, right? So when you're doing news coverage of a live situation like this, where there is a bit of, police and another side, and then, there's like lines, right? And you can kind of either report from behind police lines, or you can, want to do a different job as a journalist and get in there, get a bit closer to the action and show people from a different perspective. And that's what she was doing. Like, that's what, sometimes what we would call good journalism. And there's nothing wrong with kind of what she was doing. But the moment you do take a step like that in that kind of arena, you do put yourself in the crossfire and in harm's way.
It did look like, yeah, it does look like from the angle that he lined her up and shot, but you don't know.
Deliberate. Yeah, it does look deliberate on looking at it, but we don't really know what exactly played out there. But I'm just saying, if it was deliberate...
Yeah, it does look deliberate, but you don't see what's behind the person filming. But it was so close, it feels like it was a direct aim and hit.
Yeah.
But I think let's remember that for a minute. Let's see before I get to the reactions in Australia, just let's read these few super chats.
It's Catherine, thanks for the super chat. What's with Turnbull's face? Vax injury. His face was very red. I'm not sure exactly what.
He's just not a very good-looking guy. Thanks for the super chat there, guys. You can join the super chats. You can have it read out here on screen on YouTube. That's Jimmy. Thanks, you Jimmy. For the super chat. Thank you so much. You guys are the ones that make this possible. And we've got. There we go.
This is from Baz the Dark Horse. Thanks, mate. Defund the ABC. Yes, I do agree that the public should no longer be funding the ABC voluntarily. They should be. If you want to do a contribution to the ABC at tax time and you want to tick a box, go for your life. But I don't think people should be forced to pay for that.
But I don't even think it should be tax deductible. I think the ABC should run like any commercial station. It's a joke that we're paying for this bias reporting. Yeah, absolutely agree. So thank you so much for the super chat, guys. Super chat on YouTube. And remember, for those of you on YouTube, make sure to subscribe to the channel that you're watching on. So either Rukshan or mine or both, and hit the notification bell. All right, let's go back now. Okay, so here we've got the Prime Minister's response to that
Prime
video.
Minister Anthony Albanese says the government has raised its concerns with the US administration after an Australian journalist was hit with a rubber bullet. Channel 9 correspondent Lauren Tomasi was reporting on the demonstrations in Los Angeles when a police officer hit her with a rubber bullet. Just a few minutes, we'll get the latest from LA, where those protests are continuing. But first, let's go to our political reporter, Pablo Vinales. Good afternoon, Pablo. So the PM had some strong condemnation of what happened in LA.
Yeah, Ros, it obviously was a wide-ranging address from the Prime Minister at the National Press Club, and in some of those questions that were put to him was one around his response to that incident that we saw unfold. Channel 9 journalist Lauren Tomasi, who was hit with a rubber bullet while reporting on those protests in LA. Mr Albanese expressing his concern and condemnation of what has happened, saying that he has, or that the government, that Australia has raised this issue with the Trump administration. He says that clearly it was an apparent targeted shooting and called it unacceptable. He also said that he spoke to the journalist involved, Lauren Tomasi, saying that he called her to speak to her. She says that she is fine, that she is safe following that incident. The Prime Minister was asked, though, whether he would raise this directly with the US President. He's expected to meet the US President next week. Let's take a listen to what he had to say.
She's going okay. She's pretty resilient, I've got to say. But that footage was horrific. That was the footage of an Australian journalist doing what journalists do at their very best.
Hold on, I want us to listen properly to what he's saying, and then let's remember it for what this segue is going to open to.
She's going okay. She's pretty resilient, I've got to say. But that footage was horrific. That was the footage of an Australian journalist doing what journalists do at their very best. We have already raised these issues.
Bookmark that in your head, ladies and gentlemen, for a second, because that is a journalist doing what a journalist does at very best.
Lot to say.
He's condemning that attack, which looked like it was targeted. I want to know why the LAPD have a problem with Channel 9. How do they know? No, but seriously, no, I don't think it's okay. If it was a targeted attack, no journalist should ever be targeted for doing their job, yeah?
Of course. No way.
With the US administration, we don't find it acceptable that it occurred, and we think the role of the media is particularly important.
Yeah, okay, cool. Good to know.
So,
Thank you,
yeah,
Albo.
I've been sharing a lot of views on this on X because since I saw, I mean, obviously, look, as someone who does journalistic work and covers these type of events, you don't want to be targeted by police and deliberately targeted and hit, and we'll touch on that a bit later. So in that sense, I feel bad about, obviously, like, you don't want that to happen to any journalist, whether they be Australian or not. Now, whether she was clearly identified as a journalist or not, that's up in the air. Albanese had put up a statement saying that she was wearing a helmet and all this kind of stuff, but she just in like some jeans and a shirt.
And from the angle that he's standing, maybe you can't see. Like,
we don't really know, right? Like, all that stuff's up in the air. But I think the fact that this has risen to the level of for Australia as an international incident, where the Australian Prime Minister is involved now, and there's media going, are you going to bring it up with Trump? Are you going to escalate this issue further? You have the Greens who initially jumped on the bandwagon and called for the Australian Prime Minister to intervene now because they've seen this horrific footage of a journalist being shot by a rubber bullet. And just like you, Avi, we covered, what happened in the city of Melbourne, Victoria, all those years ago. Now
let's get to that. Let's get to that in a second, but because
I'll hold off. I'll hold off.
That's what we're leaning. That's what we're heading into. This is all just a segue because I want people to remember these strong statements. So it wasn't only the Prime Minister; it was also probably the top media personalities in the country.
Well, back to the show. Well, for days now, Nine correspondent Lauren Tomasi has reported on the chaos in LA. Yesterday, an officer turned on her. So if you slow the footage down, you can see the officer aim his weapon, pulling the trigger while Lauren had her back to him.
You just shut the You okay?
She has her back to him. She has a microphone and is standing in front of a camera. We don't know what...
I think from that angle, you can see that she is standing in front of a camera.
Yeah.
He probably couldn't see her mic, but it's pretty obvious. And it didn't look like there was a threat. But again, we don't know if there's a threat behind the cameraman or something like that. But why would he miss so early? Anyways.
Was near her. We don't know what threat was so imminent it required a cop to discharge his weapon on a reporter or whether he meant to shoot her. But it sure looks like that to me. The incident was maybe one of three things. A moment where an LA officer so thought his life was in danger, he needed to discharge his weapon. An incompetent warning shot, or the act of a coward. Either way, it needs to be properly investigated. I've had the privilege of working with Australian media overseas, and our correspondents are amongst the best globally because they are courageous and don't pick a side. They report complex, sometimes dangerous issues and take viewers at home to the front lines of the story. Lauren is a hard-working, tenacious reporter who is always determined to be fair and balanced. She's
whatever nonsense. Channel 9.
That's not true.
Carl. Yeah, Carl. All right, whatever, man. I like you, Carl, but you're full of it sometimes. Okay, so now, keeping all that in mind, so the outrage from the Prime Minister, the condemnation from the Greens, you said, the mainstream media condemning it. Let's watch this report from... what date was it? Let's see. The 19th of September, 2021, not in America, not in China, not in Israel, not in Gaza, in Melbourne, Australia.
He just comes at me and pointed at my face.
They just started spraying everyone. There was so much media there, and I reckon so many people from the media just got sprayed. We're just covering what was happening, and they just started spraying everyone.
Today you're actually working for mainstream media?
Yeah, for The Age.
And
it makes no difference with the police, my friend. They just looked at me, aimed at me, and they just went for it. I worked all over. I worked in Latin America, Asia, you name it. You know what? I've been in Latin America, in Chile, when there's riot police, when they see the full riot police coming towards you, you just lift your camera, show your media card, and they don't even touch you. Here, move, you felt it.
Okay, so he's just literally targeted the media. Why are they arresting journalists? So there you have a journalist in Melbourne, Australia, being arrested for doing his job.
There's a difference between being ricocheted, where you have the peripherals of getting targeted, like the police are going for someone and you get the side of, I get that, it happens, but when you feel like you've been precisely targeted, knowing that you're a working person, there's a different scenario.
It was on purpose. I don't know. I mean, look, press. It was on purpose.
There is no difference between how we get treated in the protests as the protesters. Having said that, I don't think protesters should be treated badly anyway. You know what I'm saying? But at least you're working and all of that. Why do it on purpose?
It's no accident. Look at him, clearly pressed, marked as press. He's got cameras on him.
Told my bosses what actually happened. It was done on purpose. But
Did they ask you if you're all right?
Of course. No. My editors are really good. My picture editor is perfect. And but it's above and beyond them, you see. So in other words, it's a matter of the big bosses getting together.
Do you think that The Age is going to stand up for you here?
I have no idea.
I just can't make sense of it, where in a Western democracy, the media is not only not safe, they seem to have been targeted in that situation.
Yeah, I can't speak for exactly what the police were doing there and what was happening, but definitely you can see my face and you can see what happened. And
somehow Victoria Police keeps confusing press with protesters. I don't know which government in the world gets away with doing that. Those governments that don't like the press showing what's happening on the front lines, China, North Korea, but this is Melbourne, Australia.
I didn't get angry at the fact that I got sprayed. I got angry that it was done on purpose. There's a difference in that, For Australia to allow the police to behave this way, to me, it's certainly not very, democratic as we think it should be.
You're right, bro. They got
Me
no
pretending
respect.
to care.
Even in Hong Kong, I did this as the front line and I never copped that.
fuck. Far out, man. They pushed some old lady over.
Yeah, they smashed her. Not even media is safe in Melbourne, Australia in 2021 because apparently it's for our health. I do hope that your bosses do stand up for you and they actually...
I just hope it's not for me. I just hope for all of us. They would get together and like even this morning when they were doing the police check, the first thing I said to the police person, what you guys should have done, once you check the media, you should give us a sticker or something to show that we've been checked. Because we've been checked.
Maybe a yellow star.
But you know what I mean.
That was a good report. Watching that back.
Let me ask you, which Prime Minister came out and condemned Victoria Police for targeting the media? Where was Karl Stefanovic to condemn the police for targeting the media? Where was the Greens? You know where they all were? They were all cheering it on.
Of course,
so
they cheered it
spare me your tears today. And that particular reporter, I don't think it's okay. But that particular reporter, if you go and look at her COVID reports at the time, she was cheering on the government overreach at the time.
Yes,
None of them
yes,
cared.
that's what it looks like.
That guy's story, he's a subcontractor for The Age. His story was only ever picked up by The Age a couple days later after our story went viral. We defended them. He wasn't a Channel 9 news reporter. He's a subcontractor photographer. But spare me your tears today. You guys didn't say anything when it was in your own home because it didn't suit your narrative. The only reason why everyone is outraged today is because they hate Trump.
Yes. I mean, and that's what it comes down to, right? We're talking about this outrage from an Australian Prime Minister about what's happened overseas to an Australian journalist. And okay, fair enough. He's the Australian Prime Minister and maybe he should raise these concerns. But what about when it happens to journalists in Australia, which had happened multiple times? And look, Albanese was not the Prime Minister, but I'm just saying in general, the whole overall gambit of all these individuals did not condemn what was happening to journalists here. And more broadly than that, Avi, moving on from journalists, because when I've talked about this issue, I've never really touched on the journalistic aspect of it, even though it did happen to journalists. Members of the Australian public, innocent people who were just walking down the streets of Melbourne, not burning cars, not looting shops, not doing any such destructive or violent activity, just protesting in a peaceful manner, was set on by Victoria Police almost at point blank range. Just like that, they fired these weapons into these people, hurting many of these people and maiming many of these people at the Shrine of Remembrance. 10 minutes before the police started firing at people like this, I was talking to people with families in strollers and their kids and all this kind of stuff. And then the Victoria Police, with these exact same weapons that they're so worried about that hit this journalist, Victoria Police indiscriminately, not even targeted like that particular police officer perhaps, let's say that. What is worth is indiscriminately started firing in to a crowd of Australians gathered peacefully at the Shrine of Remembrance, causing no trouble or harm to any of the police or throwing anything at them. So we have this double standard in this country where we have now a Prime Minister, the media class, calling for investigations about what happened in the United States of America because they are so anti-Trump, but they do not even care about what the police do to their own citizens in this country with the exact same weapons, hurting them to achieve their own political outcomes. These are the highest order of hypocrites. And we should have no respect for them. And look, I do care about what's happened to that journalist, and people call me a hypocrite for not making a big deal of it. But essentially, when it comes to my heart is with the people of Australia, and they did this to the people. I saw them do it. I saw them shoot innocent Victorians, and that has never been investigated. That is, no one's ever taken accountability for it. No Prime Minister in this country has ever stood up and said it was wrong to shoot innocent members of the Victorian public the way that we did for merely coming out into the streets and actually practicing their civil disobedience in a respectful manner. Exactly. So I cannot put those two things together and look at what's happened to this 9 News reporter and be like, oh, well, she deserves all this protection and all this sympathy and all these things from the press. She does deserve care or whatever, and look into the investigate it. But what about the rest of the Victorian population? What about Australians? What about Prime Minister, the people in your own country? When are you going to start caring about them and what your police and your thugs and your goons in the state, labor officers of Daniel Andrews did to the people of Victoria? When are you going to give a shit about that? Because until these people talk like that, whatever they say at Meet the Press and talk about Trump and stuff, you shouldn't take them seriously. You should just call it for what it is. It's all bullshit. It's all theatrics. It's all their Trump derangement syndrome. And just let it be what it is and move on with your life, because they don't care about this country.
It's selective outrage. Specifically, like, if you compare both those things, if you compare the violence we saw perpetrated against citizens in Victoria who were peacefully protesting, compared to what, in some cases, restrained law enforcement to actually violent protesters in LA, there's so much more outraged about police targeting violent protesters as opposed to peaceful protesters. And there's so much more outrage about a reporter in America on the front line of violent protests than they were at peaceful protests where how many, even in that footage, you saw me, you, the age, so at least 3 or 4 or 5, we saw those other 2 guys, so 5 journalists targeted point blank, and you said nothing. Not only did you say nothing, you cheered them on at the time.
Exactly.
You cheered them on. I don't see anyone cheering this on. You cheered them on. Spare me your selective outrage.
100%. And it was like towards the end of those protests, so maybe we haven't talked about this before, but towards the Shrine protests and stuff, that's when the government in Victoria at least tried to delay the helicopter coverage of protests. They try to control the news. And there was a clampdown on all types of media.
Yeah.
So unless you played by the rules and stood behind police lines, which is maybe what the LA police wanted this reporter to do, unless you actually did that, you were kind of in the crosshairs of the police. And those journalists that you in your video that were arrested, now they're well-known photojournalists. They go to every protest. Police would know who they are.
Yep.
They're wearing press insignia very clearly on their helmets and everything. They did everything correctly, but they were still getting harassed, getting arrested, and all that kind of stuff. So we were literally living in a police state where it was being normalized that the media should be harassed and arrested and even shot at and attacked just for being in that area. So no one cared. They didn't care about any of this stuff. And yes, I'm saying the same thing over again, but I think the point has to stand that the escalation we're seeing today in terms of diplomatic action being taken because of what happened in America with this 9 News reporter, it just pales in comparison when you think about what happened in our own soil in this country, in Australia, and the lack of shit that was not given by any politician or any media figure. And the fact that they closed their eyes to it, they just said, okay, well, they deserve it. This is what happens to people that do this. So be it. It's just disgraceful. And until this is addressed, I think this will always be a point of inflection where people say, well, remember this, you guys didn't do anything about this, so be it. And I don't blame people for bringing it up. And I think it's the right thing to do.
All right, let's read some super chats quickly.
It's from Riot. Bring that good-looking guy back from 2021 back on. I don't know if that's you or me, Avi. Probably me.
Probably you. Although everyone talks about my haircut at the time. Remember, I always had my hair perfectly done in the braids because my wife is a hairdresser, and there was even that situation where the cop was like, "How's your hair so good?" I was like, "Well, mate, how are you so worked out?"
I think he wanted to know if you could sing a hairdresser on the sly.
Yeah, remember that? He did. And then I was like, "Are you secretly going to a gym, mate?" There was a whole funny thing with that. And Riot did another super chat. Thank you.
For some razors, get them before price fixing. Shave, boys. He's telling us to have a shave, mate.
I know. What are you trying to say? I did have a really ugly beard at the time. But it is what it is. Thank you so much for the super chat, as usual, Riot. And we know you're a regular, so really appreciate it. And here's another regular.
Abby King, thanks for the super chat. I'm sure the police can't wait for these moments to let loose. I'm sure most of them are psychopaths that probably have small doodles or have not been loved by their parents. I guess it's a problem across the globe. And I think there's some truth in that. There are, police officers that look at these opportunities, whether it's in Victoria or in LA, to act out. And they have aggression and rage, and they might act out in certain ways. And it's important that it's called out. In this aspect, they're trying to blame Trump, but this actual police officer is an LAPD police officer.
What do you reckon? Do you reckon Abby? Hold on. Do you reckon Abby? Sorry to interrupt. I'm reading back the comment. I'm also sure most of them are sociopaths that probably have small doodles or have. Do you reckon they're talking about protesters or police? I'm not completely.
Police. She's talking about police.
I guess, yeah.
She's talking about the police.
Yeah.
But I get what she's saying because it's
true.
true.
I don't know if all cops are so.
Not all cops. Not all cops, but even during COVID protests
in COVID, you saw
heaps of police like that. But even in LA, there might be some frustrated officers who might just be like, this meat. Because look, those issues that you're seeing in America right now, what you have is police trying to set up containment zones. So there's protesters, there's police. They're trying to create areas of distance between them or control the actual area. So what happens then is, of course, annoying media like us, we get in the way, we come in between them. We might not assist them in doing that in the efficient manner that they like. And some people get frustrated. Some people get angry with the media. They want to get rid of you. And these things happen. So it could be something like this. I don't know. We don't know. They're going to investigate it apparently because, it's the number one thing that needs to be investigated in the world right now.
Here we got 2 more super chats. Thank you for
Hidden Radar, thanks, mate. The revolution will not be televised. Yeah, look, when it comes to that happening, it's possible.
That's how it was in COVID, that's for sure. Thank you for that super chat. And one last super chat.
This is from Pink 799. Thanks for the super chat. Make a video showing the contrast go viral. I think there's been a few people that have done that.
I commit to it tomorrow. I'm going to make a video tomorrow.
Yeah, make a
because
video.
I forgot how good that footage was from that day. And we'll do that tomorrow. Yeah, thank you for the super chat. Thank you everyone for the super chat. As usual on YouTube, you can super chat. We will read every super chat out because it is you guys that help us make this all possible. So really appreciate it. All the other YouTube comments are scrolling there. Let's just quickly go into the last video of this entire story where I guess people are pointing out the hypocrisy already online today.
When were Australians' freedoms taken away? Are you talking about the COVID lockdowns that protected you from dying? Because unless you're an Indigenous Australian, unless you're Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander, it's not really checking out, is it? You COVID anti-vax freaky deaky people need to fucking let it go and admit that you were wrong. But it's this confirmation bias, right? Like it's a survival bias. We're like, well, I'm fine. It wasn't that big of a deal. You know why you're fine? Because of lockdowns. Oh my God. I can't believe 5 years on we're still having to explain this to you people. Ah! When were Australia...
So that's the mental gymnastics.
Someone was pointing out that the hypocrisy, and then Abby Chatfield's taken that and gone like,
the hypocrisy of being outraged. So the hypocrisy around what we were just talking about.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, there's so much evidence today that shows that even at the time, a lot of the things that were happening during COVID policy-wise or
I like how she picked the lockdown, because the lockdowns are specifically the thing that there is so much evidence and has been proven. And in fact, the government itself were forced to admit that it was based on no science. So the fact that she's digging her heels in on that issue and justifying the violence against citizens who were peacefully protesting, against journalists who were who were just trying to do their job, all while condemning the LA police for doing something far less horrific, shows you and tells you everything you need to know about the far left.
100%. And they know that all that stuff was wrong. They know they've gotten it wrong. It's been very publicly discussed. Everyone knows that all that crap was wrong, that whether it's vaccines or whatever issue, that a lot of things have come up now which are being scientifically backed and backtracked and all sorts of nonsense and papers that shows the stuff that a lot of people were arguing for during that time. A lot of people who were silenced were actually on the money. And, you know, the derangement you see from Abby Chatfield is she's the one that's living in a bubble. She's the one that's refusing to engage with anything that's come out since.
4 years, 5 years on, she refuses to accept how wrong they got it. She's such a clown, but I don't want to go on about Abby Chatfield because
let's forget about that.
It's too easy, low-hanging fruit. But speaking of legends of COVID, there was this news that came out this week.
This year's King's Birthday Honours list has faced backlash from critics of Scott Morrison after he received the nation's top honour. Our political reporter Tim Lester is live in Canberra. Hello, Tim. The former Prime Minister leads this year's list.
Yes, and the letters are AC, Companion of the Order of Australia. It is the highest civilian honour we can give under our awards system, and confirmed today, Prime Minister of 4 years, Scott Morrison is a recipient. He's been reflecting on just how stormy those 4 years at the helm were.
You do the best job you can on the day, and then you shake yourself off the next day and you do it all again. And that's the nature of being in government, particularly during a time like I served.
I think Scott Morrison should give it back.
Morrison led Australia's COVID response. Deaths here far lower than many countries, though the pandemic PM's critics say his performance then was anything but award-winning.
And it's an insult to people and small businesses that were shut down during the lockdown. So you're rewarding someone for actually doing horrific things to the Australian people.
The 57-year-old controversial too for his role as Social Services Minister during the rollout of the problem-plagued robo-debt scheme a decade ago, and holidaying in Hawaii during the Black Summer bushfires.
You don't get everything right, particularly when you face that many challenges. But I tended not to dwell too much on that.
You did use once in a text to describe our former Prime Minister, a hypocrite and a liar. You've never trusted him. Will you be calling our former Prime Minister to congratulate him this morning?
Look, I wish them all the best.
Politicians, prime ministers, well paid. Should you guys be getting them?
Well, I'm not looking for one. I think it should be concentrated on those who've worked for nothing.
Scott Morrison, one of 14 named as a Companion of the Order of Australia in the honours list.
These honours recognise the selfless service, integrity, achievement, creativity and care that flourish across our nation.
Our award system is now 50 years old, and every former Prime Minister in that time has been awarded an AC. Famously, Paul Keating turned down his. So I guess in a longer term, Anne, it would have been surprising if Scott Morrison wasn't.
All right, so it's basically a participation medal.
It's a pat on the back for these globalists. I mean, they kind of get one by default, but the thing is, right, Avi, so what I was saying about this on X was, at least if they had some type of, royal commission or investigation into the decisions that were made by these people at that time, maybe Australians could come to terms with these kind of awards being handed out for their bravery and the decisions that they made. But we saw time and time again that these decisions were based on absolutely gobbledygook, nothing, right? Whether in federal parliament or in state parliament here in Victoria, we've seen the admissions that they had no idea what they were doing. So how do you get an award for that? I guess the creativity in the fact that they made stuff up, they made up all these rules, that's creative, I guess. But in terms of managing a crisis and what happened during COVID, sure, he spent a lot of money. They took a lot of money and they paid everyone off pretty much to keep them at home. They did these things, but really, is that something that should be rewarded as a crisis? Like, anyone could have kind of done that type of policy, right? Any government would have done that policy if they had access to that type of money. So I don't think these people being rewarded for managing a crisis like COVID, for instance, squares up with the reality on the ground, which is there were lots of systemic failures. I mean, Scott Morrison ended up, at one point, we found out that he had like 5 or 6 portfolios, all done in secret. I mean, this guy had a litany of disasters around him, and some, of course, pushed by the far left and people that don't like him, that's fine. But I think many of us saw during COVID that our Prime Minister let us down, and on basic things, right? On basic things like what was happening in the States, the abuse of civil rights of people, right? Did Scott Morrison speak up when people in Melbourne were getting shot? No, he didn't. He didn't give a shit. So these kind of things happened. So to give an award for crisis management, I don't think many Australians would look at that and just laugh and scoff it off. But he's gleeful. He's accepting, and he wants. I think he feels like he deserves this recognition. So he's very happy with that, and he wants to be a part of that system. And it is what it is.
All right, final story of the night. It's been a great show tonight. I've been enjoying it.
It's been a good show.
There's been so much happening. Okay, so there is I guess he's called a pro-Israel influencer named Hillel Fuld. He's an American Israeli. I actually did know his late brother, who was murdered in a terrorist attack in 2018. His name's Ari Fuld, who visited Australia a couple of times. I've seen him both here in Australia and in Israel. His brother was a right-wing campaigner and activist. Hillel is certainly not a right, like, he's much more centre. I used to look at him as more of a lefty. I think October 7, where Jews and Israelis worldwide have spoken out more. He's probably been a bit more, I think a lot of Jews have been pushed a bit more to the right, but basically he is by no means far right or anything like that. His visa was denied. He did a interview with Shari on Sky News. Let's just watch that. I haven't seen it, so let's watch it together.
The letter from the Albanese government includes a couple of examples of what they claim are your controversial views. You talk about the number of people radicalised.
So apparently they cited Islamophobia for the reason why they rejected his visa. So they're afraid that him coming to Australia will incite the peaceful, most loving Islamic community who in all that period they've had hate preacher after hate preacher after hate preacher.
On X. In another, you say differentiating between Gazans and Hamas is dishonest. Do you think these views are so controversial that they should prevent you from visiting Australia for 3 years?
As far as Gazans, we had thousands of Gazans coming to Israel on October 7th. Most of Gaza elected Hamas, and many of them, as you saw, paraded the hostages around when they were being released. So we're talking about a society that's deeply, deeply indoctrinated. Not to say, by the way, this is important, that there are no innocent people in Gaza. Of course there are. But that is a completely irrelevant point because, again, there's never been a war in which innocent people were not killed. And it's sad, but that's the reality of war. Israel did not want this war. Israel did not start any war, ever. But Israel also never lost any war, and that will be the case in this war as well.
And Hillel, whether people agree with your views is actually beside the point. This is a free speech issue, and surely not everyone who comes into the country has to agree with the Home Affairs Minister, Tony Burke.
Right. Where do you draw the line? I mean, anybody who has pro-Israel opinions won't be allowed into Australia. It's obviously a dangerous, slippery slope. It's not something that I think a government should, partake in at all. But I got to be honest, our enemies, the pro-Hamas crowd, did something kind of brilliant. They aligned their agenda and their narrative with free speech, which is something they do quite often. There's nothing, free speech about inciting actual violence, like globalize the Intifada, which literally means a violent uprising on the global stage against Jews. And yet that's, not frowned upon. But when Hillel Fuld says that there was no massacre in Gaza, which again is a fact, all of a sudden that's hate speech, that's Islamophobia. It's absurd.
The decision from Tony Burke also says you have the potential to use your speaking circuit to make inflammatory statements which can incite discord. So there's concern here about the way the pro-Palestinian activists might respond to what you're saying. I mean, that's victim blaming, isn't it? It's stopping the Jew coming to the country in case the pro-Palestinian crowd grow violent.
That's right. It's absolutely absurd. But furthermore, the topic of my talk wasn't even politics or anything to do with Gaza or anything like that. I was there to talk about how Israel and Israeli innovation is changing the world and making the world a better place. What's inflammatory about that?
Well, the United States government has had to try and step in and implore the Australian government to reconsider its decision on your visa. Have you heard whether there's been a response to America's letter?
I'm not going to lie, it's kind of funny that I've become a diplomatic crisis. But yeah, Ambassador Huckabee is a friend, both of mine and my family's, and of the Jewish people in the state of Israel. So he was the first person that I emailed to let him know what was going on. He wrote back a beautiful letter, which was sent to the government in Australia, of course, and I had not heard back. Not only did I not hear back as a result of his letter, but I appealed, went about it the normal way. And in addition to Ambassador Huckabee, we have Israel's foreign minister, we have Israel's former ambassador to the UN, and many, many other diplomatic channels that are trying to solve this problem. I have not heard back a peep, not a word from the Australian government.
And I should mention, while this has become a major diplomatic incident now, you didn't even want publicity about this. You told me about this decision on what would have been Friday lunchtime, your time, Friday night, my time, but you didn't want me to report it. You wanted it resolved behind the scenes. You weren't looking for this to become a big issue.
That's right. I have no reason to, throw anyone under the bus as long as it's solved. Now it's Monday and I'm supposed to be flying tomorrow, so clearly this will not be solved, especially since there's a holiday in Australia. So it's fair to assume that this is not going to be solved, and so now is the time to let the world know that this is pure anti-Semitism. And if you need evidence to that effect, I'll just mention that, again, not something that many people have reported, but I did receive through a channel, not directly, from an official in Australia who said to me, if we can reverse this, and I can't promise that we can, but if we can reverse this, I need you to commit to not discussing your dead brother. Literally, that's what they told me. You could come, but you can't mention your brother who was murdered by an Arab kid. And I was like, are you kidding me right now?
That's insane. Can you tell us who said that?
I received it indirectly, so I don't actually know the name of the person. I received it from the people who were flying me in, who asked me. I was told that if you can commit to that, we might be able to reverse the decision. I didn't speak directly to the person, so I don't have a name for you, but it came from the highest levels in Australia.
Absolutely absurd. That is so offensive to ask you not to speak about your brother who was killed. What sort of reputation is Australia getting in Israel and the United States when it comes to this issue?
So I think Australia is jumping on the bandwagon of all the Jew hatred across the world, right? We see parliaments, whether it's in Canada or in the UK or many other countries, South Africa, of course. This is what happens throughout our history. The Jew is scapegoated and everyone jumps in and joins the party. So this is not something, that surprises anyone. But as a general statement, it's shocking to me that I've seen this level of anti-Semitism in my lifetime. Again, this is not something new. We see it in every generation, but I, in a million years, never thought that I would see this in my lifetime. And I'll tell you even furthermore, on October 7th, as an optimistic guy, I said to myself, if there's any silver lining here, it's that the world will definitely stand alongside Israel. I mean, Hamas live streamed it. There's no scenario, I said to myself, in which the world doesn't stand with us. And that support for Israel lasted about 24 hours, probably less. It's absurd. It's absurd because not only is Israel an incredible country that has done nothing but good in the world, but the Jewish people as a nation have done so much good. And these anti-Semites in general often use Israeli technology to spread hatred against Israel, whether it's Wix websites that they're building BDS websites onto, which is a website builder, obviously an Israeli company, and many, many other examples. When you take a picture with your phone, dual lens technology on phones was developed by an Israeli, and Waze and drip irrigation. The list obviously goes on. So if they're going to hate on us, then stop using our product.
Look, Hillel, I'm so sorry this has happened to you. We're all
Makes
sitting
a funny point that we often hear about the Israeli technology that they all use. The funniest I find is when they have like BDS stickers, so the boycott, divest and sanction on like their little laptops where it's got like an Intel processor, which is Israeli. It's like, bro. But it is pretty wild that what they're claiming he's saying that was Islamophobic is that there was no massacre in Gaza, which is a fact. That's not anti-Muslim. And secondly, that most of Gaza supports Hamas, which by every public poll that's ever been done, including the election in 2005, is a fact. It's not Islamophobic. It might be wrong. Mate, you can argue he's wrong. But is it Islamophobic, and is that grounds to ban somebody from the country? Outrageous because outrageous in of itself, but also let's think about some of the people that do come here.
Yeah, there's some insane people that come here. I think this shows you, obviously, Tony Burke is a very conflicted individual, and he's just all over the shop. And
he's Western Sydney, isn't he?
He just comes through and shows. I think he's got lots of issues, that guy. But more broadly, I think in terms of multiculturalism, I think this is also a problem. Like you're seeing, things like we take for value, like free speech, for instance. Like you said, this guy might be wrong. Sentiments of what he's saying might be, offensive to people. Who cares? Like, at the end of the day, you're not going to agree. But we cannot have a society where it's dictated by one, group of people that are like, okay, well, we don't like the things that they're saying. And look, from my opinion, it goes both ways. Whether it's Jewish organizations trying to ban people from coming to Australia because they have certain views that they don't.
I think people should be able to come to Australia if they're pro-Palestinian or whatever. It doesn't matter.
Yeah,
the line is the line is drawn at incitement to violence. If somebody is promoting, pushing an incitement, so jihadi kind of rhetoric, that's not that's dangerous to Australia because
that's against
that poses it poses a threat, a physical threat here. But if somebody's pro-Palestinian, and even if they're lying about the conflict, I have no problem with them coming here, mate. Go online. Everybody's lying about the conflict.
Yeah, exactly. Like you said, the threat to violence is important. So obviously, if you're someone that promotes terrorism very openly against allies of Australia itself, and things like this, and you speak in mannerisms where it's like you're promoting violent acts towards the West because of your jihad or something like this, no, get the hell out of this country. Don't come in. Don't give them a visa. Like, we don't want that nonsense here, right? Stamp it out. But if you're just having, intellectual debates, or you're kind of arguing over a point of a contentious war, and you have a differing opinion, like, that's not going to cause havoc here, unless, of course, the admission here is that there's certain elements of the Australian population that cannot be controlled. Their violence cannot be controlled. How they will behave cannot be controlled. So it's more not a reflection on this particular individual and his views. It is the reactions of the people that will be in Australia. And we saw that most famously with Novak Djokovic, where there was this terror that the whole kind of pro-vaccine, pro-lockdown, the Abbey Chatfields of the world would melt down if Novak Djokovic was allowed to stay in Australia for merely being someone that doesn't personally want to be vaccinated. Like, that was insane, the amount of diplomatic nonsense that took place with that. So we do have this problem in this country.
We have form.
We blame other people, but it's really about the fact that in this country itself, we don't have like, social cohesion and freedom of speech and things like this very easily, because there are elements that want to control that or want to stop that from happening.
All right. Let's just read the last couple of super chats, and I'm going to get some dinner.
Thanks, Riot. I meant Rukshan is the good looker. Rukshan, thanks, mate. I promise I am not. This is not my alt account.
If I read that before I brought it on screen, I would have just pretended it didn't exist. Shame on you, Riot. And last but not least,
this is from Catherine. Catherine, thanks again. What was response to Tomasi 25 shooting versus Damon's fatal 29 shooting? Does the color of the shooter change response? So that's interesting. That's that woman that was murdered by the cop. Do you remember around the same time
Minnesota?
As George Floyd?
Yeah.
The Australian woman that was shot by a cop.
By Mohammed something.
Yeah, and there was not outrage as it was for this issue.
I remember the Black Lives Matter. I did the interview.
Yeah, you did you asked people about that.
I'll pull that up because that was like the old school. That's exactly on that point. It's reminiscing, like going back to watching old content that I did. Some of it's cringe. That one was pretty entertaining. So this is what they're referring to in that comment. Let's watch that video before I go. Let me find it. So it's because I was pointing that out.
Yeah.
I was pointing that out, exactly that point, and the hypocrisy of the Black Lives Matter movement at the time. Let's see if I can find it.
But yeah, thanks guys. We'll come to the end of the show. We'll play this video and then probably close it off from there. Hope you've all had a enjoyable time with us, chit-chatting about world news and politics. And thanks for all the super chats as well. It's been good fun. I'm really enjoying this format and doing this. And I think having the comments on screen, Avi, is really good as well. Getting everyone's comments on there.
Yeah, I do. All right, let's watch it. Well, I'll just put this up and maybe I'll stop it whenever we've had enough. So we're here at the Black Lives Matter protest in Melbourne, Australia. Now we've come here to ask some basic questions because we're in a COVID crisis at the moment. Restrictions. Anybody can be fined for going to work. But 40,000 people have descended on the city for the death of an African American in Minnesota at the hands of a white police officer. So, do any of them even know Justine Damon's name? Justine Damon, this is woman that was murdered by the same police force. Let's find out. She got shot dead by an African American. Is that just as bad or not?
No, it's not. No, it's not. No, it's not.
It's just shit, the amount of people that are like, all lives matter. It's like, yeah, okay.
Does all lives matter?
Not right now.
Why do you think no one ever protested like this? 40,000 people in the city for somebody who's not even Australian. But when Justine Damon was shot dead, and she doesn't have a criminal history, why do you think that is?
Well, I'd have to say that's a bit of white supremacy, is it not? You know, that's not...
Why is it white supremacy?
Well, because she's white. She's white.
Do you know how many white Australians have died in police custody?
I don't really care, to be honest.
Are you arguing with the statistic, or you just don't like it?
I think you need to talk to people of colour and get their voices.
I'm a person of colour. Are we off to the protest today?
Yeah, we are.
Can I ask you something?
That was good.
So George Floyd is what kicked this off, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You care about George?
Of course.
Do you know somebody called Justine Damon? No.
No.
You sure?
Yep.
Do you know who she is?
Not explicitly, but I've heard just the name.
We'll jump on the train with you. You going on this train?
Yeah.
To bring awareness that it's also happening within Australia.
What's happening?
Racism.
What racism exactly?
That we neglect the First Nation of this country.
How do we neglect them?
We don't provide them with the same opportunities that we have.
Which opportunities?
It's this systematic racism. It's the same thing. You can't deny that it's not happening.
No, I like the wording, systematic racism. Give me an example.
432 Aboriginals that have died in police custody.
How many white Australians have died in police custody?
By the way?
Do you know how many white Australians have died in police custody?
I don't really care, to be honest. Don't want to have a conversation.
You don't care?
No.
I guess
with George Floyd, maybe given his skin colour, it just kind of is more triggering to the population here because, I mean, as my sign says, same racism, different soil. Yeah.
Do you know a person called Justine Damon? No. Justine Damon? Do any of you know that name?
Not that I know of, I haven't heard it.
George Floyd is just one of many, and it's been happening since, you know...
Yeah, I understand that, but the problem is that statistically, actually, white people are killed at a higher rate by police, in police custody, unarmed white people. More unarmed white people are...
Yeah, where are you getting your facts from?
TR News.
What is that?
Yeah, no. Are you arguing with the statistic, or you just don't like it?
I think you need to talk to people of colour and get their voices.
I'm a person of colour.
Yeah. But
Guess my person of colour status just wasn't going to cut it there, so I'll ask someone a little bit darker than me.
Justine Damon was murdered, unarmed, no criminal history, by a black police officer in Minnesota.
Okay.
There was no rallies here in Australia, the country, you're Australian.
Yeah.
Why?
For that one specifically, because the majority of black people who get murdered in America aren't by black on black crime or by black people. It's actually by police officers or just white people. It's not majority of it's not from black people. So that's why we didn't need a protest for that. And
I love my black brothers and sisters, but that's actually false. That's not true. You alright?
Hey!
You guys aren't going to the protest, are you?
No, I'm seeing your video.
But what about your shirt? You look like you're already... Black shirts matter?
No, I've only got another one underneath. We've just been out for lunch at the pub. We're going back to his pub.
Did you social distance?
Yeah, that's why we're sitting on separate seats. Yeah, we're doing distancing.
Have you heard of someone called Justine Damon?
No.
No. Okay, so can I tell you who she is?
Yeah.
She's a white Australian woman.
Right.
That was unarmed, in her pajamas, shot dead in Minnesota.
Oh, okay, yeah, I know who you're talking about now, yeah.
Now, why do you think no one ever protested like this? 40,000 people in the city for somebody who's not even Australian. But when Justine Damon was shot dead, and she doesn't have a criminal history, why do you think that is?
Well, I'd have to say that's a bit of white supremacy, is it not? You know, that's not... I mean,
Why is it white supremacy?
Well...
It's so funny watching
she's
this back
white,
these
because
days.
she's white.
So many years later.
White.
Go and stir up the pot. You know what it is?
I'm just going to ask the questions no one wants to ask.
I love it. You stir them up.
So where you live?
We are. You know what the funny is? We're on Spring Street. We just have to pivot through people and get back there.
You're basically taking your white privilege and you're going to walk down Spring Street.
What an arsehole.
They should deport him.
They should deport him. It's a good kid, that kid.
You can't talk about... The cameraman, they can't see it. He's Asian. You can't be talking to him. You need to kneel.
Take a knee. If I take a knee, then can I talk about it?
You can ask permission. Guys, be careful. No, she's all right. You know what she said, the first thing? Don't Black Lives Matter?
All lives matter.
That's it. Oh, I love her. What? All lives matter. God, like Filipinos. Oh my God.
So what are you doing?
Oh, we're going to the protest to talk to these crazy people. I mean...
She was shot by a man of colour as well.
Yeah.
I did feel really sorry for him because I thought that there was an injustice for him as well.
For him? Why?
Far out.
Well,
Insane.
Because I don't think he really meant it.
The look on my face is exactly what I was thinking. I had nothing to say. This is the kind of logic they apply. They say, Mohammed Noor, who shot dead an unarmed white woman in her PJs, he must have accidentally committed that horrific crime. But the officer that was pinning down George Floyd, who was a violent thug who just committed a violent offence, that police officer, while he was pinning him down to restrain him, he must have done it on purpose, even though he was being filmed. Now, I'm not saying it's right. Neither are right. It is wrong and he should be punished. But these people, they think, on one hand, a blatant crime that's obviously perpetrated on purpose, or at least much more likely to be a purposeful act. They think then, on the other hand, when it happens the other way around,
why am I wearing my
we've got to
pajamas
excuse
is
it.
what I want to know.
It must have been an accident.
So I'm wondering as well.
That's the end of my trip to the protest. I
It
finally
doesn't look like you
arrived,
slept much either.
and it was well worth it. We got to talk to
This
a
was
few people
early
on the
days.
way.
This is TR News.
Now
all right?
I'm coming in.
Low
to the
budget.
What I want to point out is that at least the helicopter is socially distancing.
I love you.
Let me ask you, I love you.
This
too.
was like beginning
Let
of
me ask you,
COVID.
I love you more. But
Yeah,
listen,
I mean,
are you
you
here
pause
for the
it there.
protest?
I just wanted to comment that it's a great snapshot of like a really interesting time in history.
Yeah.
Look back on this maybe 20, 30 years from now. It's a very interesting time. You have that kind of BLM, COVID just coming in, people just saying still outrageous, crazy things, of course, and
Yeah.
just
People
a
can go back
snapshot of
and watch. If anyone who wants to watch it, go onto the YouTube channel.
Go
You can
watch,
finish
yeah,
watching it.
what Melbourne was like, and I think we've only deteriorated from that point. Melbourne is probably like even more social justice warriory and just weird kind of energy. Like the people that are talking to you on camera, it's hard to believe some of the things they're saying. Like it's insane. And I don't think these people have changed. They've actually gotten worse, in my opinion.
I've forgotten about it, and like watching it back, I'm getting the shock that I got obviously at the moment when she said like that is the craziest thing I've ever heard. She's there at a Black Lives Matter protest because George Floyd got killed by a white cop who actually, I think the group, they were barely white, but whatever. And she's protesting it because he's black, and it didn't look like it was a purposeful act. But then the one that was a blatant, pure shooting dead of an unarmed, like harmless, she looked harmless, white woman, somehow she still felt bad for the perpetrator just because of his skin tone. Like, how racist do you have to be? Anyways, let's read this last super chat and end tonight, guys. If you want to watch that, just go to my YouTube channel and search up Black Lives Matter. It comes up as one of the, and we're about 8 minutes in. There's still like 10 minutes of it, so of the actual march, which was pretty funny. But we need to wrap up tonight.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks, guys. Yep. Thanks, mate. Thanks for watching. Thanks for the super chats, everyone. Just wanted to say,
Thank you all, and we'll see you on Thursday. You still around in Sri Lanka, or you're loving this?
I will be around.
You're loving this excuse to not have to hang out with family.
The hanging out with the Fernandos. I'm actually in the Fernandos area, the Catholic part of Sri Lanka. So just around lots of churches around here. It's actually really interesting seeing the difference, I guess, when it comes to things like church and stuff, and how those things are treated here, and as opposed to what's happening, back home in Australia. It's very.
Do they have more respect for it there? Do they have more respect for it?
It's like massive. It's a massive thing here. Like all these kind of old Portuguese, British kind of churches that are like just street after street. It's just churches, like different churches, and it's massive. Like festivals and stuff, and pictures of Jesus and Mary everywhere. So you kind of really feel you're in like a very kind of Catholic heartland of Sri Lanka.
All right, mate, and thank you to everyone that's tuned in tonight. Remember, whatever you're watching on, especially YouTube, make sure, if you haven't done so already, subscribe and hit that notification bell so you get all our lives. But for now, good night, and we'll see you on Thursday.
See you guys. Bye.
Rukshan, Andrew Tate, Fernando.